All right, Everett, all of my various clocks say it's 7:01, so do you want to get us started?
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and bring this meeting to order. Meeting of October 13th for the Sebastopol Planning Commission. This meeting complies with the Sonoma County Health Officer COVID-13 order to shelter in place issued on March 17th, 2020, and pursuant to California Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20 issued on March 17th, 2020. And do a roll call.
Thank you. And we've got a couple other people joining, so we'll see if any of them are commissioners, but I will start off. Chair Fernandez.
Here.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Here.
Commissioner Howe.
Here.
Commissioner Kelly.
Here.
Commissioner Dauch.
Yeah, good evening.
Commissioner Lindenbush.
Here.
Commissioner Ottinger.
Here.
And I believe
Commissioner Wilson.
Commissioner Wilson, thank you.
Here.
All right, we have all present and accounted for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so first on the agenda, approval of minutes of September 22nd, 2020. Does anyone have any additions or changes? And before anybody speaks, pretty detailed meeting minutes. Were those, looks like they were transcribed?
Yeah, so we are testing out a computer software that transcribes. So they are slightly different formats. So thank you for your patience as we get used to them. And thank you, Commissioner Lindenbush noted that there were some misspellings of some of the commissioners' names based on that transcriptions, mostly Kathy's. So thank you. So we will get those corrected in the minutes without any need to move them. Those are just typographical errors. But yeah, if you do have suggestions, we're trying to make it more efficient, especially with the softwares available now and the fairly detailed minutes we had previously. So, but I am happy to hear any feedback you all have.
Yeah, Vice Chair Fritz.
Just a general comment, and I know I had emailed you, Carrie, earlier, but can we just get rid of all the ums and you knows and
so we can, yeah, thank you. We can train it to ignore filler words like but when it is something that's an actual word, like a like or something like that, it's more difficult because those are used in sentences. I did check on that already today. Since those are also used in sentences as part of context, you can't just say ignore this word or screw up some other stuff.
Okay. I do have some specific comments. So on page 3, kind of the middle of the page is one of my comments that's talking about the flood level. The grading plan shows the finished floor at 78, and it says, but the finished board is required to be 80 feet. I think it's the finished floor is required to be 80 feet. I'm not sure what the.
Yes, I believe that's correct. Yeah, that makes sense.
That would be good to fix that. And then, like 2 comments down from that, I kept reading this over and over. I actually had to go and listen to listen to it because I'm like, what? I sound like I'm drunk. I couldn't quite figure out. And our assistant planner on this one had sort of kind of interjected something, and so he said something as I was also speaking. So I think the clearest thing to take out is what it says, I can't remember. There's a couple of them. If we can just strike that phrase, because I don't know what that was trying to say, but I think there was a double speaking there. And then the next sentence where it says, I'm just wondering, how are those distances, I'd like to add the word determined. How are those distances determined? Because again, that didn't really make sense as a question.
Okay.
And I think they had something else. This is on page 5. And this is actually one of your comments, your first comment on page 5. Kind of the last line that says, right now, there is a left turn a lot out of for the other uses. And that's supposed to be allowed instead of a lot. And I didn't go through this whole thing in that much detail, but that is just one, as I was kind of scrolling through looking for things, that's one I noticed. So there
Great,
might be
thank
some
you.
other
Yeah, that
weird
makes sense.
things like that, but and I can see how this saves planning staff from a lot of time, but it was
Yeah,
a
and it
little,
still takes her a bit of time to get it going, but the intent is as you train it who the people are and whatnot, that it's supposed to become easier. You know, this is a test, and if it
Yeah.
doesn't work, then we can go back to
yeah,
the old
I'm
way,
sorry, I did find another one on page 13. And I think I'm just trying to clarify. So my first comment on page 13, I mean, we could just strike that. So what kind of, because that doesn't make sense. So the equipment is upstairs and you're relying on the building to, what I want to say was block the sound. That was the intent of that comment. Instead of kind of, you know.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I
it
see
makes
that.
me be much more careful about how I speak, I think.
It'll make us all better public speakers, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think. I'm sorry, there's one more on page 23. And again, this is one of your comment in the middle of the page, Carrie. Kind of the middle of that paragraph, it says it would be simply considered an infill. I think it's supposed to be, not an info.
Oh, yeah, infill or an intensification
Yeah.
of the existing use.
Yeah. Okay, that was all. Thanks.
Commissioner Howard, do you have any revisions or additions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly?
Hello.
Yes, hi. Do you have any changes to the minutes?
I think my final comments also didn't include where I had concern about turning off of Abbott onto Petaluma, and how trying to cross the traffic to turn left there the block before. I'm not quite sure if I read that it was in the minutes.
All right, and the good news is we do have the traffic consultant here tonight, so Commissioner Kelly, you'll be able to ask that question. And I know he's already listening, so he's probably already jotted that down.
Commissioner Dauch? Oh, sorry, did you have?
Sorry, no, I don't have any corrections, but like Paul, I read back some of the remarks, and it was, we'll have to speak more carefully with this transcript.
Progress.
And it's a little harder to get through, just to get through the balance and to get a sort of a concise view of the whole meeting, which I often use the minutes for. So it's, I can see it must save time, and it's certainly more thorough, but we'll learn to work with it.
Okay, Commissioner Lindenbush.
I have no revisions other than what I had previously emailed the staff. Thank you, Chair Fernandez.
Okay, Commissioner Ottinger.
I'll preface this by saying that I was at one time a professional transcriber working for court reporters. And I think the ums are important, and so are the commas and the ellipses. But that said, I'm so grateful that we have a recording of the event. So I will abstain from approving this the minutes for this for that past meeting, because I don't feel it's an accurate representation, but I look forward to it being better in the future.
Okay. And Commissioner Wilson.
I was not present, but I did listen and watch the video. But I don't feel prepared to comment on the minutes, even though I watched the video, because I know what Steph is trying to do. I think it's very important to save money, and I'm 100% in favor of that. But I find a transcript with all the ums and ahs and okays to be overwhelming, and it's just almost too much minutia, and I'm not getting the gist of the meeting. And it's like 25 pages single spaced or whatever. It's really so it's not what I'm used to, but I am in favor of saving money. And if you think you can make it work better in the future, I'm definitely willing to work with it. But I want to participate in this matter. I have watched the video, visited the site, and read all the materials, but I'm going to abstain on the approval of the minutes.
Okay. And my comments are, I think it's good that we get more detail. I mean, one extreme is the ums and the uhs, but the other extreme, what we've had before, is commission asks questions of the applicant, and that's it. And so we don't get to know what were those questions asked and that information. So I think, we're on the right track. We'll keep trying it, hopefully, and it'll get better. But we'll keep experimenting, and as Carrie said, can ask for everybody's patience, and then we'll let you know about typos and so forth before meetings would probably be helpful. Okay. All right, so let's go on. At this point, I'd like to ask for any comments from the public on items not on the agenda.
We're gonna.
And actually, Chair Fernandez, should you call for a
Oh,
motion?
I'm sorry. Yes, we should.
Thanks.
Motion to. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
Sorry, getting ahead of myself. Second.
I second.
Okay. A motion, a second to approve the minutes. Roll call.
All right, thank you. Chair Fernandez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Dauch, and Zach, you're still muted.
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger,
Abstain.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes,
Commissioner Lindenbush,
Aye.
Commissioner Haug,
Aye.
and Commissioner Wilson.
Abstain.
All right, so the motion passes with 2 abstentions.
Okay. Now we're going to have comments from the public on items not on the agenda. We ask that anybody making comments to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you. And for this, we did receive 1 comment for the first item on the agenda, the hearing. We have not received any written comments for the commission items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment for this meeting, you can do a couple things. One is you can use the chat, or you can raise your hand if you know how to do that in the Zoom format. And if you're visuals, you can also just raise your hand like this, and I'll go through the gallery. All right, Chair Fernandez, I do not see anyone wishing to make public comment on items not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm moving on to item number 5, statements of conflict of interest. If anyone has any conflict of interest, ask the commissioner to speak up. Okay, doesn't seem like it. Okay, we'll move on to item 6A. And this is a kind of continuation from the last meeting. Conditional use permit, tentative parcel map variance, project number 2019-027. This is a public hearing for an application from Mark Reese requesting approval of a conditional use permit to operate an automated car wash at 6809 Sebastopol Avenue. A tentative parcel map to subdivide an existing 1.51 acre lot into 3 commercial parcels, and a variance to allow a reduction in the minimum floor ratio below the requirement of the municipal code. and a proposed mitigated negative declaration for CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. The project includes the construction of an automated car wash with upstairs office space and the installation of a driveway to Barnes Avenue. The existing tire shop and oil change operation will continue on site and are not affected by this application. And let's see. The Planning Commission is advisory on this application. So basically we're making a recommendation that will be forwarded to City Council.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. So I'll get us started and then I'll hand it off to Dave Hogan, the contract planner. As noted, the commission is advisory on this. And so there's a resolution in your packet should the commission wish to forward a recommendation of approval. If there are other options for deliberations, we can give additional direction there. But just to note, this is advisory because there's a tentative parcel map and subdivisions are determined by the City Council within the city.
Excuse me, Carrie, we'll also intend to open it because there's new information. I will be opening again for public comment.
Right, so I was going to clarify, we did close the public hearing at the last commission meeting. It is the commission's right to reopen for public comment, additional public comment, which would happen after the staff report and any additional applicant presentation. So with that, I will hand it off to Dave Hogan to, and we do have both our noise consultants here. I'll introduce them. Steve Dines, who is here, and then we also have Steve Weinberger from W-Trans, our traffic consultant for the project, and also one of the traffic consultants who does a lot of work for city projects as well. So he's very familiar with a lot of the conditions in the city. Dave?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening. As has been mentioned, this is the commission's second meeting to consider this application. At the last meeting, the commission had a number of questions regarding the project. And so what we've done tonight is the staff report just kind of highlights the questions, and I won't repeat the discussion of the noise impacts or the air quality or the traffic. We have Steve Daines and Steve Weinberger available to answer those. So what I will do then is I will kind of skip over those and then talk about some of the questions that the commission had that don't really relate to Steve or Steve. We did clarify how the distances were measured in the staff report in the initial. It's a difference strictly between property line to property line or structure to structure. And apologize for the confusion. Staff did go out and look at 100 Brown Street and 130 Petaluma, and there was nobody living in either of those buildings. Though one of the tenants commented that one of the upstairs tenants spends so much time there that he might as well have been living there, but there's no residential uses in those buildings. And the commission pointed out that condition of approval 78B was not particularly well written and wasn't very clear, and staff has rewritten that to focus directly on making the left turn out onto Sebastopol Avenue and then a left turn on Barnes to access the car wash. So that's been clarified. Since the staff report was prepared, the commission received one additional letter of support for the project, and that was provided to you this evening. After the last meeting, staff was contacted by the Federated Indians of Grattan Rancheria regarding the project. We had originally contacted them, sent them a notification in early August with a 30-day notice ending in early September that this project is coming up and did they want to request a consultation. We didn't hear from them until after the previous meeting. And so we did have a chance to meet with them yesterday. And one of the things that's been provided to the commission this evening and is up online as well, is some suggested modifications to the text of the initial study as well as the addition of an additional condition of approval that is really kind of a clarification of the condition of approval CR1 for cultural resources. And so what we will be doing is we will be recommending that this additional mitigation measure be referenced on page 6 of the resolution of approval. It will be incorporated there, and we will be meeting again with the tribe at some point in the future after some additional analysis has been done. But the condition of approval will still include a monitoring agreement, an archaeologist on site, tribal monitors during grading and ground, as well as highlighting the requirements and responsibilities of all those parties. So we will be recommending that if the commission chooses to approve it tonight, that be incorporated into it. We also made one minor clarification, the cultural resource condition of approval number 1, to reference the new tribal cultural resource condition of approval number 1. I think at this point, unless the commission has any questions, after we are done with me, if we can call in Steve Daines with Illingworth and Rodkin to discuss noise and to share some of the things that he learned from the air quality people with Illingworth and Rodkin on water vapor. And then after his presentation and any commission questions, then we can move on to Steve Weinberger and would go through the same process with him, if that's acceptable to the chairman and the members of the commission.
Yeah, that's a good way to proceed.
Okay, that summarizes my very brief staff report, and I'm available to answer any supplemental questions the commission may have.
Okay, go ahead and you can advise or wave to, and Carrie will. It kind of was wanting to have them do their presentation, and then we could get our questions together and then ask them all at once. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, so why don't you continue on, and we'll commission can write different questions and we can address them to the individual that be appropriate.
Are we going to have?
Yeah, you can go ahead and continue with.
Well, I was done. So my question was, would you like Steve Daines to start his discussion with you at this time? Or
yeah.
Are we waiting?
Yes,
Okay.
please, Dave.
Okay, Steve, you're on.
Oh, thank you. So we completed Illingworth and Rodkin completed a noise study for this project. We visited the site and conducted measurements between June 4th and June 9th, measured ambient noise levels of the site, determined the compatibility of the site with the general plan and municipal code regulations. We calculated noise that would be emitted from the project, resulting primarily from the blower dryer system of the car wash. We found that with installation of the manufacturer's specified car wash silencer, that the noise levels resulting from the project would be brought down to levels below those specified in the general plan and the municipal code. We additionally addressed concerns in a subsequent memo with a 10-foot wall along the eastern property line to reduce noise levels at the site to the east near the Ford building to below 70 dBA. We additionally calculated estimated vibration levels from construction at surrounding properties and suggested some mitigation measures for that. And we found that there would be no unavoidable and significant impacts with the suggested mitigation. Additionally, after it was brought to our attention, we talked with the team about addressing noise at the upper level office window of the Ford building and proposed an alternative design for a noise wall, which would further reduce noise at the Ford building. With introduction of a 10-foot wall, we found that noise levels would be reduced to below 60 dB at the greatest noise exposure at the property. And we found that this, given that the ambient noise levels during hours of operation on weekdays in our ambient noise measurement survey were 57 dB. Based on the municipal code 8.25.060, section 4, there is an allowance of 5 dB above the existing ambient noise level. So weekday, that would bring the weekday noise level limit to about 62 dBA, and our measured ambient daytime hours of operation noise level at the site was 56, again above the 55 regulation for commercial spaces. That would be brought up to 61 dB at the nearest property line. And we found that with introduction of a curved wall that follows the exit path of the car wash, that noise levels would be brought down below 60 dB, not to exceed 60 dB, and would therefore be compliant with the municipal code. We additionally received a question that we passed on to our air quality and greenhouse gases team regarding potential contamination, particulate matter in water vapor produced by the car wash. Our team has done multiple car wash studies in the past and have never encountered a problem like this. We were told is particularly concerns like these are more typical of much larger projects like large industrial sites or power plants. So would very likely not be a concern for this project whatsoever. And there was an initial question on the source for the noise levels that we proposed in our mitigation for the car wash blower dryer system. And that originated from the manufacturer's specifications for the car wash dryer. The brand is called a Protovest S130. We took our noise measurements that we used to calibrate our model directly from that, and the suggested noise levels in the mitigation were those that were listed as the post silencer values in the data sheet from the manufacturer.
Okay. And we can continue on to the next speaker.
Yes, please. Steve Weinberger from WTrans.
Good evening, Steve Weinberger, WTrans Santa Rosa. What I'll do is address the comments that came up in the staff report and that, Carrie, that you passed along to me, and maybe then take questions from there. So I believe there was a question about
Your first time. That's right.
Yeah, they kind of just threw me right into it, right?
You did really well.
Okay, I'll go on. I believe there was questions about delays caused by vehicles turning right into the Benedetti driveway from Sebastopol Avenue. And I'll preface that by saying that there are no standards, city standards in the general plan that address driveway delays and level service. But with that said, what I can do is kind of give you an idea of the amount of delay that may cause. So given the amount of traffic that the car wash is going to generate, it's and the characteristics I'm providing are for peak hour conditions, AM or PM at highest hour of the day. The car wash is going to generate about a total of 16 vehicles in an hour coming into the site. And given those are coming from different directions, some are turning left, some are turning right, and some are, we have assumed will be entering via the new access off Barnes. But the amount of traffic that's entering during a peak hour at the driveway turning right is essentially only about 6 vehicles during that peak hour. So about every 10 minutes, a car would be turning right into the site. And essentially just the amount of delay is pretty minimal, several seconds of delay. But in general, if you got to think about the system between Petaluma Avenue and Morris Street, in general, we don't see any change to the amount of travel time within that 1,000 feet of distance, because as vehicles might get delayed by a few seconds when someone's slowing down to turn right, they still generally during the peak hour have a queue, stop queue ahead of them that they'll join before proceeding with the green lights at Morris Street or Petaluma. I think that was the question about right turns. Also, there was some questions about signal coordination. Just so everybody's aware, the east-west traffic on Highway 12, the two signals at Main Street and Petaluma are coordinated because of that short stacking distance between the two. Those are the only two traffic signals that are in coordination. The Morris Street is not part of that system, given the way the volumes work. It's not advantageous to include that in that coordination, given its distance away and the turning movements that happen there. There was a coordination study that we completed earlier in the year for the city that provided some recommendations for improvements to signal coordination. Those have not been implemented yet, based on our understanding from Public Works. I also was going to comment, there was some comments about the use of the Barnes exit, whether that should be signed for one direction or the other. We highly recommend that it remain as proposed as entry or exit from that new access to the Abbott Barnes area. In my opinion, it provides greater flexibility for access to the site and essentially allows traffic to maybe access and leave the site by not having to make left turns, by mostly making right turn movements. One thing we did not include the effects of in the study is that new access may also draw some the traffic from the Benedetti facility, the lube and oil and the tire service, to where there's excess capacity. We see sort of the Abbott access as some a way for traffic to avoid congestion on Sebastopol Avenue. And we did look at the level of delay at the Abbott Petaluma intersection, and that there is city standards for that, is well within the standards level service B for that right turn, and that is not expected to change with the addition of the car wash traffic. So with that, I'll entertain any questions about any of the traffic issues.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anyone else that's going to be presenting, Carrie?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So at this point, we'll just address any questions the commission has, and we can, whoever is appropriate to answer that question can jump in for that. So I will start. Vice Chair Fritz.
Yeah, I have a couple of acoustic questions, clarifications. My first question is, so you mentioned and I saw the diagram, the plan that showed the proposed sound wall curving along the edge of the exit drive. I'm just wondering, what is the height of that wall?
The minimum height would be 10 feet.
Okay. And then you mentioned that the decibel level was going to be at 60 or below 60 decibels. And so where is that measured? Is that measured at the second floor, window kind of location level?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it would be at the equivalent height of the second floor window.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Okay. Thank you for that. Commissioner Howe?
I have a couple questions. One, if I'm reading these different, this is for the sound consultant. it looks like most of the noise, and when I walked by the car wash in Santa Rosa on Mendocino Avenue, it seemed that most of the noise came out of the front where the vehicles exit the car wash. Is that correct? And that's also when I looked at the different graphing that also seemed to correspond. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
And it seemed to me when I was in person that there was less noise to the entrance of the car wash. Is that correct?
Yes, that would also be correct. Our measurements in the past have determined there's usually about a 3 dB difference between the exit and the entrance of a car wash.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm wondering if the car wash was moved a little bit away from the property line, if that would decrease the noise to the people in the Ford building.
Depending on how far you increase the distance, it could have a measurable effect. It seems there's only so much space for it to be moved. I'm not sure of the other ramifications of relocating the car wash, but most of the mitigation would need to be provided by like a sound wall as opposed to just relocating the structure.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not, familiar with the ins and outs of designing and a car wash. It just seemed like if you could face it in a direction where there's no residences or potential residents, you would mitigate the impact of the noise on the overall community. And such a large lot, it seemed like there might be some different options in terms of placement, since the owner of this lot also owns the adjacent 2 lots, and it's quite a bit of space. So I just wanted to ask that and get that confirmed.
Yeah, I can confirm that there may potentially be some way to relocate the building that would decrease noise, but it wouldn't have the most substantial effect overall, given the general size of the site in general.
Thank you. And then my next question is for the traffic consultant. My question is, I just wanted to clarify, you're estimating that the car wash will generate 16 new trips per hour? And do you know what existing trips come in and out of the other services are? Or is this 16 trips total for tire, lube, and car wash?
So we were estimating traffic just for the car wash, as if that would be the only new generator on site. So, and we did not have counts available for the other uses. And based on those rates for that size of a car wash, considering some of the traffic comes from the existing stream of traffic on Sebastopol Avenue, it's actually during the peak hour 32 additional trips. That's 16 in, 16 out during that peak hour.
So that's,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to, sorry. So it's 32 total in and out, plus the other customers that might be using the tire services and the lube services?
Right, that's independent of the other uses. But as you know from that facility, there are some times where there's people will go to the lube at this same time. I know that Benedetti's provided a service where you can bring your tires in to be rotated, and they'll take your car over to lube and vice versa. Don't know if that's going to happen with the car wash facility. We did not assume any commingling of trips where we assumed as if it were the only thing on the site, because with uses like this, you will get some combining of trips. People may go get a car wash and get a lube at the same time. But in terms of trying to find out the worst case number of trips added to the site, we just assumed it was an independent car wash facility adding trips to that driveway.
Okay. So, I mean, do you think it would be fair to assume that it would be maybe 4 additional an hour, bringing it up to a total of 20 cars entering over the course of an hour?
The estimate is an average peak hour. Well, and we had daily trips as well. That's 300 additional trips were estimated on a daily basis.
Okay.
That's 150 in, 150 out.
Okay.
During the peak hour, it was 32 trips, 16 in, 16 out. Additional was what the rates show for that size of facility.
So, okay, and that, so if we calculated that on a minute by, so if it's 32 trips per hour, that's about a car entering and or exiting about what every 2 minutes, just for the car wash.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And then I had one other question, which was,
Yeah, if I can add on to that.
okay,
Another thing to consider is we estimated about a third of those trips are going to be using that rear entrance at Barnes and Abbott. So it the number you just related is assuming all of the car wash traffic comes in and out of that driveway on Sebastopol Avenue. We're estimating that's not going to be the case. It's about a third would be using the Abbott and Barnes rear exit. So maybe on the order rather than car every 2 minutes, the car every 3 minutes, say.
okay, but I mean, theoretically, because the Barnes Avenue one and the front of Benedetti's both are outputs onto Sebastopol Avenue, they're theoretically have the most traffic coming from that access points.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kelly.
Okay, let me start with the traffic consultant. Hi, Steve. So there were several of us who were concerned about turning left onto Barnes from Sebastopol Road. And there isn't a dedicated turn lane there. And I know when I'm going to work around 2:30 in the afternoon to Santa Rosa, there's sometimes a double slowing of the traffic to allow someone to turn left. And I'm wondering if you have suggestions, maybe asking Caltrans to double yellow that area to maybe prohibit or to cue people that they shouldn't be turning left. And wondering, I know the traffic study didn't really reveal that since you were looking at intersections. Can you have some comment on that?
I think so. So you're talking about left turns onto Barnes, not left turns into the project driveway, correct?
Correct, into Barnes from
Okay.
Highway 12.
Okay, and I'll just preface it by saying that there is the center 2A left turn lane still exists. So turn left into the project, you're making that left from the center turn lane, which then ends right after that. And then beyond, and then just to the west is the Barnes intersection. And you're correct in saying that legally now you can make a left from that through lane into Barnes. There is nothing prohibiting that. If it's the desire of the city, I don't see this necessarily related to the project, but as I do understand that movement does cause some delay as getting traffic up to the Petaluma intersection. I kind of see it as a movement that happens more during off-peak hours when, because it can be quite difficult with somebody on your tail to make that left during a peak hour. But if the city chooses to work with Caltrans, I really think that Caltrans would shy away from doing a double line because the width of the street is so narrow there. But you'd have to put in other measures such as raised markers on the existing double yellow that would discourage and prevent people from turning left there. So, but again, I think that's, if that's something that we can pass that on to Public Works to discuss with Caltrans.
Okay, and then my my other concern was turning north or right out of Abbott onto Petaluma. People have a difficult time getting across to either the turn left lane, to go west, or the street before it, trying to turn on that.
Onto Burnett,
And wondering if you think that's going to cause any more problems. I know people won't actually turn right because they're trying to find a hole in the flow, but I just concerned that it's going to even slow traffic a little bit more.
Okay. So we did evaluate the Abbott Petaluma intersection in terms of level of delay with the additional, and it's again, a small amount of traffic with the additional right turning vehicles. That intersection does meet city standards, as I said, with a level service B for that right turn, well within the general plan standards, and is not expected to, I think the change is less than a second or second and a half increase in delay for that right turn, but still well within standards at a level service B. Just anecdotally, I where I live in Sebastopol on west of Main Street, and I have made that move many times, and for this study, checked it out. And because most of the traffic that turns right from Abbott, a good portion of it wants to get in the left lane to turn left onto Burnett, and then south and left on South Main Street. You tend to wait for a bigger gap in traffic. You don't just, since you have two lanes approaching you, it is easier just to turn right and continue straight, like say towards Whole Foods, than it is to turn left on Burnett. And you do have to wait a little bit longer, but again, everything is within city standards. I don't see it as a critical movement, and just requires a little bit more patience to wait for that. There are gaps in traffic. There are heavy volumes on Petaluma, as we know, but Abbott is situated south of that queue that forms up at the signal, and there are gaps that come along to allow that right turn to then immediately. You have about 300 feet before you have to turn left on Burnett. So I think that is a nice feature of the rear access to the project, to take advantage of that, because frankly, in terms of the level of delay in accessing the site in vehicles, the car wash, you'll have an easier time leaving via Abbott and making a left on Burnett, say, than you would waiting for a gap to turn left directly onto Sebastopol Avenue, which is why I thought that was a nice feature of the project to open up that rear access.
And then my last question to you is, I had brought up the idea to discourage folks as they're exiting the project, and now they're turning. If their intention is to turn left onto Sebastopol Avenue from Barnes, where there is a no left turn indication there. But if coming out of the project, there was also a sign on the project's property indicating that there'll be a no left turn ahead or something like that, just so folks don't find themselves all the way up to Sebastopol Avenue and going, oh, I can't turn left.
I think it's an interesting and difficult mitigation to provide a no left turn lane. Barnes is appropriate for a no left turn because that center turn lane is now gone. The nice thing about the center turn lane and making a left turn is you can use that for a refuge to make your left and as a two-stage movement. Turn left into the center turn lane and then merge to the right. You don't have that at Barnes, which is why when that project was developed, it was developed as a right turn only. The thing about applying no left turns at this driveway is you have a good half dozen or more other driveways on this section of Sebastopol Avenue, and they should all be treated similarly. So if you're going to prohibit lefts, you shouldn't just, you should do it all at all these driveways, not just one. But I think, again, going back to the rear access to Abbott and Barnes, that is an outlet that users of the site, locals who are users of the site know during peak hours it's difficult to make a left. And once they, especially with the car wash, will see this access and towards the feed store, we'll make the connection, then that's an easier way to leave the site rather than making that left onto Sebastopol Avenue. During off-peak hours, it is easier. As a user of many businesses on this corridor, kind of plan your exit based on the time of day. And that's has seemed to work for that. But again, I think the car wash being located pretty close to that new exit will give people a cue that's an easier way out. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dauch?
Thank you. Yes, I have a question for the sound consultant, the acoustic consultant. I think you said that the noise at the upper floor exterior of the neighboring building, with the addition of the 10-foot curved wall, would be around 60 dBA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, and then I think in your analysis or some in the staff report, it talked about typical construction and what you might see in terms of reduction from the exterior of the building to the interior of the building. With windows closed, that was around 25 dBA, and with the windows open for ventilation, around 15. So that would yield an interior noise level of around 35 to 45, depending on if the windows are open or closed. Can you give us a sense of how that compares to an indoor environment, office environment, typically? And frankly, I read these numbers and I, have tried to understand what 70 dBA is, because that was relevant to the exit of the car wash, and went to another car wash to see what that was like. But it's hard to gauge what 35 or 45 dBA is to the layperson. Can you tell us a little more about what that the experience of those levels will be?
Yes, sure. I'll state off beforehand that the Cal Green Code limits the interior noise level in non-residential structures to 50 dBA LEQ during hours of operation. So this project would not result in an exceedance of that, even with the windows open for partial ventilation. 35 to 45 is usually the maximum allowable interior noise level for residential structures. Typically, as another reference for just sound levels in general, conversation between two people is generally around the 60 dB level. So having noise levels around 35 to 45 would be substantially below your typical level of speech and wouldn't result in any interferences in a conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't have any questions for the, regarding traffic, so thank you very much. Sorry, back to you, Everett. I have no more questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lindenbush? You with us? Did we lose him?
You might be having technical problems. His
Okay.
video isn't there.
All right, we'll come back to him. Commissioner Ottinger. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I have a number of questions about noise and traffic. I'll start with noise. So originally we had a wall along the edge of the property at 6 feet, and now we have a new 10-foot wall that extends 50 feet, I understand. How is that while reducing the numbers that we have? And there are some numbers that we don't have. So in terms of the numbers that we have, originally, with the silencer at the exit, 10 feet from the exit, we had 77 dBA with a silencer. Now, I'm guessing that the 10 feet is within that sound wall. So that's not really an important message for us now, because the sound wall is keeping the neighbors and the nearby residents outside of that 10-foot area. But regarding that, with the sound wall, doesn't that make, if you're standing at the exit, doesn't it make standing at the exit actually louder?
There would be some reflections provided by the wall that would make the area immediately adjacent to the exit louder, but not at any adjacent receptors or structures.
Okay, so the sound emanating is going to reflect or deflect off that wall, but sound goes up and out in all directions, and it goes around corners. So when that sound is deflected or reflected, I'm not sure which that is it actually louder as it's going out, like straight up, for instance?
You could have some focusing provided by the curved wall, but the way it's currently designed in the presented figure, and from the results of the modeling that we ran, it wouldn't result in any noise increases in the vicinity. But generally, yes, reflections can potentially result in increased noise levels in select locations.
Thank you. So since the sound wall is 10 feet from the entrance, I sort of have to ignore that number in terms of how it affects the neighbors. But with the silencer, it's actually 63 dBA at 50 feet. And so how do you think at 50 feet the sound would be affected? Say, let's say 50 feet to the east, on the adjacent property to the east at 50 feet. What do you think the sound would be because of the wall?
With the wall implemented, it would be much, much lower than that. Those numbers, the 77 at 10 feet and 63 at 50 feet, refer to the specific manufacturer's noise levels after the installation of the silencer. So that would be without any, obstruction whatsoever. I could see would be, well, I don't have a particular receptor set in the model, but it would be reduced substantially below 63 dBA. It would not exceed 60 at the adjacent property.
Not exceed, so it'd be less than 60. But you don't know what, you can't tell me what it might be.
I could say I did also test at the southern facade of the Ford building. So,
and the next one, it was the marshmallows. You're right. Yeah.
I'm sorry. At the southern facade of the Ford building, noise levels would reach about 58 dB with introduction of the noise wall.
Okay, south of the Ford building, and that's immediately south of the building. There's an open area without the tents right there. Because I was concerned that the sound would come up and bounce off the corrugated siding and come down. So you think that would be 58?
Yes, that's the results of our model would indicate that having a wall of sufficient height would reduce the possibility that noise levels from the car wash would exceed any standards of the Ford building property.
And I'm looking at table 2, which compares what comparable sound is to 60, which is a little bit over 58. And that's the sound of heavy traffic at 300 feet, which is about where that site is, except that it's quieted a bit by the Ford building. It's very quiet back there. So it's actually going to be a little bit louder than the traffic.
Generally, it could be a little bit louder. A guideline in general is the lowest increase in noise that one can usually notice just with their ears alone is a 3 dB increase. So we find that with the introduction of the wall, it would be just slightly noticeable increase in noise overall.
So in your opinion, if people were behind the Ford building at the makerspace holding a meeting or talking to someone, I was there recently listening to 2 people talk, and at very common normal voices, the traffic was not a concern at all. Do you feel like they could continue to have that quiet person-to-person conversation with 58?
Yes, I believe that would be appropriate. Yeah, I think we typically manage to do that while walking along busy roads or even smaller roads in general where the noise level even exceeds that.
Okay, and then at the 2nd story office building, let's assume that the window is open and you're saying it would be less than 60.
Correct.
There, and you say that 60, it's a little less than what my chart says normal speech is at 3 feet. So people inside that building would still be able to sit across the table from each other and hear each other. It still seems like it's very close to the fact that with the window open, they'd be hearing traffic at 300 feet, which I guess is fairly quiet. Just trying to make sure that what numbers we had before are the same here. The old study said that without the new wall, the number was 46 at the Sebastopol Inn during the peak hour of use, and the Sebastopol Inn is 480 feet away. So 46 is somewhere between a large theater conference room and a dishwasher in the next room. Do you think it would be even less than that now with the wall at 480 feet away?
Yes, I think after introduction of the suggested wall, it would be slightly less. And if I could attest to the noise levels potentially at the interior of the 2nd floor office of the Ford building, even with the window partially open for ventilation, you'd have about a 15 dB decrease in noise levels, which would bring it down to maximum about 45 dBA interior, which would be very easy to maintain conversation above.
Okay, so 45 is somewhere between a large conference room and a dishwasher in the next room.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to make the numbers mean something to me and to other people. And with the office closed, was that what you were saying? The noise at the window, or I mean, inside the building, was that what, excuse me, is that the 45 that you had?
The 45 was in reference to having the window partially open.
Okay.
It would be another 10 dB below that if with standard resident or standard commercial construction that we're assuming for a building like this. So it would be brought down to 35 dB.
Okay, which is only a little bit less. Yeah, about 4.
It's
dB
approximately
less.
twice as quiet to be perceived.
Okay. And as noises go around over the top of the wall, they go around corners, you can hear them. They drop off fairly significantly as they go. I'm thinking of the sound going over the wall to the makerspace, which is my big concern. It goes around a 90-degree corner. Does it then wrap around? I think it does, because it's a wave.
Yes, you're right. There would be some diffraction around the wall, but the vast majority of the sound would be reflected away from the Ford building, from the adjacent subdivision.
Okay, so it would be probably less than heavy traffic at 300 feet at that point. Okay.
Yes, my modeling results show that it would not be significantly above the existing ambient noise levels.
And you believe that two people talking could hear each other speak without conflict with the noise?
I do, yes.
Okay. So with that, I'm trying to think then if there were a housing structure built across the wall and the windows went up even higher than the second floor. What if they went up to a third floor and they were residences so people opened them? We don't know where those windows are. They might be right at the maker space. If they were at the second or third floor, could we assume that they were the same as at the second story window of the Ford building? Would it be similar, or because it's directly above, would it be greater?
Particularly, usually in situations like that, the noise level would increase slightly with elevation up to a certain point. But with introduction of the wall, because the wall would be shielding so much of the direct sound from the car wash, even at elevated floors, I wouldn't imagine there would be significant noise that would result in any exceedances or interior noise levels that would exceed any building code standards.
Okay, thank you. I believe you have answered all my questions on noises. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
Well, my questions related are not related to the two experts that are here. So would you want me to wait? I wanted to ask staff about the variance findings in the draft resolution.
I mean, you can ask now. I think it may give information when we get to public comment, if you'd like.
Okay, well, I have a question for staff, and I'm looking at the draft resolution that you've prepared for the Planning Commission on page 4 under variance. And I'm looking at the 8th whereas, and it is referring to the car wash. And as you know, the zoning code requires exceptional or extraordinary circumstances to approve a variance. So I'm looking at what the proposed findings are on that. And there's a sentence there at the end of that 8th whereas on page 4. And it says, the site is an infill development project within an automotive uses, probably should be use, and the use itself, a car wash, is compatible with other uses on the site. And this is the part I'm confused about. But then it goes on to say the use is not compatible with other mixed uses such as office and residential uses. And so my question is, what does that mean? I mean, there are office uses nearby, and in fact, this proposal includes an office. So if the car wash is not compatible with other mixed uses nearby, when zoning for uses nearby is mixed use, how does that make any sense? How does that support the variance?
Sure, and I can take a stab at this, and then Dave, you can chime in if you have additional thoughts. The variance is for a floor area variance, and so basically the variance is for not covering the entire site. And in this case, to meet the minimum FAR of 1, you would have to either have 50% of the site that's being created, the new parcel, covered with structure, or have 2 stories 50%, or the entire site would need to be covered at a 1-story level. And the dynamics of a car wash with the required circulation and the queuing that our code requires for that. Yes, they do have an office on the 2nd floor, but to have multiple offices within that same building, that structure is designed with insulated concrete blocks, so that it protects adjacent uses and uses outside, but to have it within that same envelope would be difficult to have a number of other offices or other uses. So it's not necessarily about adjacent sites so much as it is the particular site itself and the ability to do a FAR of 1 on that particular site, given the constraints of the use and and also the dynamics of how it's connected to the automotive uses. And Dave, I'll let you add any additional thoughts.
Sure, I'll go ahead and add a little bit to that. The situation, oh boy, I lost my train of thought. I hate it when I do that. The situation is that the variances for floor area ratio, and floor area ratio in the context of the downtown is really looking at, future systematic redevelopment in parts of the downtown, where you are going to be looking at, 3-story buildings, I don't know, with a combination of commercial and office and residential. To put that type of standard onto an auto service center creates a hardship that you aren't really going to see in other locations of the community. You have, as the director pointed out, to meet the floor area ratio for this new lot, you'd have to have a building covering the entire lot, 1 story. You're not going to be able to do that with an auto service center in a suburban community like this. You could probably get away with it in, downtown San Francisco, where your property values are higher, but it's just not going to support it here. So the principle of the variance is you have a situation not created by the property owner that creates a hardship by the strict interpretation of a code requirement. And I think that's the key. And I do see the typo, and we will fix that. Does that address your comment, your concern?
Not really, no. I mean, I don't understand the sentence, but are you saying that a residential, I understand why they want to put a car wash there, but are you saying that a residential use or an office use could not be put on that particular site as an alternative?
No, we're saying, given the chosen use or proposed use for the site, building it out with a car wash and other components to get to the one FAR of 1 doesn't make sense. And our variance requirements or additional requirements do allow the exceptional circumstances or conditions related to the use, not just the land and the building, the site characteristics, but specific requirements of the use to be considered, whether or not the strict conditions of the zoning ordinance should apply when reviewing a variance. And so in this case, we're saying, the automotive uses that are there, and the proposed automotive use of a car wash, while it's allowed in our in the downtown commercial zone with the use permit, it's not necessarily compatible with doing a full build out of FAR of 1 on that site. I think the other thing that staff looked at as well was, in a lot of ways, other than the subdivision of the site, if this wasn't being subdivided, it would not need to meet the FAR requirement of 1, because it would be an intensification of an existing site, and the FAR of 1 is only required when you're doing when you have a vacant lot or a complete redevelopment of a site. It's not required when you're just intensifying the uses of an existing site.
The next sentence is incomplete. It says the location of the site is, and then nothing after that. Is that a typo, or am I missing something?
Well, Commissioner, the sentence is clearly missing something. I would declare that a typo. With the commission's approval, just strike it. Just because that was in the previous resolution as well. And I think we can delete that fragment of the sentence safely.
So I have a question about table 17.25-1 of the code, which is on page 17-39. And as I read that, this talks about various uses may be permitted or not permitted commercial, office, and industrial zones. This is table 17.25-1 of the zoning code. There are 3 automotive related uses described on the table. Automotive gas and fueling, which doesn't apply here. The next one is automotive repair and service. And the third one is automotive sales, service, and repair. Of the two that might be applicable, Benedetti doesn't sell gas and they don't sell vehicles. And so when I looked at that, I thought that the automotive repair and service category fit Benedetti. Unfortunately, that is not a permitted use in the CD zone. And so it looks like staff has instead applied a different category, automotive sales, service, and repair, which is conditionally permitted, but there are no sales that occur here. If you use that one, you're basically ignoring the prior category in that table. And I was wondering if you could explain that, please.
Sure, and for that, and I'm just using my, if you look at the definitions in our code for the automotive sales, service, and repair, it specifically includes, says, I'll just read the section, automotive sales, repair, and service uses, including the following uses and similar uses as may be determined by the Planning Commission. It includes auto sales, rental service, auto rentals, auto service stations, auto repair garages, auto or truck washes, and tire sales and services, and fast service oil change. So in our code, automotive truck washes are specifically listed underneath automotive sales, service, and repair. And that is why we classified it up this. It's plain language of the code in my mind.
But,
it does not that does not require that there be automotive sales.
But aren't you then reading out of the code the prior category of automotive repair and service, since by your interpretation you're subsuming all of that into the next category, and they're completely different. I mean, auto repair and service is not allowed in the CD zone, but is permitted in the M zone. But automotive sales, service, and repair is conditionally permitted in the D zone and not allowed in the M zone. And you're ignoring the automotive repair and service category and selecting the sales category. And I had assumed the sales category was more akin to, the Volvo dealership on Corby or something, and you want to sell cars, and cities like to have car dealers because they got a sales tax, and people who sell cars, they like to service them and they like to be able to wash the cars. And that's how I interpret that one, because you don't interpret it that way. You basically are reading out of the code the prior section, automotive repair and service, which is not permitted in the CD zone.
So I think this is an interpretation, because this actually says it's up to the Planning Commission to determine if this is a like use. One thing that, as we were reviewing this, we saw is that the automotive service and repair section that you're referring to is actually not in the code definitions anymore. I don't know why that was, because it was before my time, but it is something that we will need to correct. What that necessarily included versus the automotive sales, service, and repair. It does not say that it needs to include all of the following or any specific of the following in, and I'm happy to actually just, I can actually just put that up on my screen so that everybody can see. Here's the definition. Obviously the fuel station is an easy one to discount, and I agree with you there. So this is sales, repair, service uses, including the following uses and similar uses that may be determined by the commission. The site currently already has 2 or 3 of those uses on the site. They're asking to add a third, and it's the commission's pleasure, as stated in that definition, to determine whether or not this is a similar and compatible use.
Well, I don't think every term in the zoning code has to be in the definition section. So just because automotive repair and service is not defined in the definition section, I don't think means that it's a typo or something. And I also think your interpretation doesn't give any credence to that category. I mean, you're just basically saying it's a typo, but it's not. I mean, the uses are allowed depending on which one you pick, in the M zone or not, or in the CD zone or not. So I don't really, I just think that by your interpretation, you are also saying the automotive repair and service section immediately above should be, you just take a pair of scissors and cut it out of the code, because that's what you're doing. And I don't know that that's the commission's role. I think the council could fix this in a rezoning. And I think that's, when I read all this, I think this should have been handled as a rezoning, and then we wouldn't be worried about the variance findings, which I find somewhat difficult to make.
Okay, any other questions or information for that? All right. So I have a couple questions. So the the noise wall that's going to be 10 feet, is that, this is for staff, is that a go to design review, or for something like that to determine, you know, how it looks, obstruction, how it fits in, that type of thing?
Yeah. Yes, that the actual design of the wall in terms of the materials and its relationship to the landscaping and other things that may go into it will be going to the design review board, yes.
Yeah. And is that wall set up to deflect sound? Does it have any kind of absorbing properties of sound?
At this point, I don't think they've actually designed the wall. I think the primary purpose is to deflect the sound from the adjacent property to keep the noise generated by the car wash on the site consistent with the city's noise requirements.
Is there a way, would there be a way to add some material, or have it some material that would absorb sound rather than just deflect it?
I'm sure there is. The architect or one of the applicants' team may be in a better position to answer that. I'm getting over my head in terms of my knowledge and expertise.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I can note, and perhaps Steve Dines can comment on this, because we did have a preliminary meeting with the applicant to discuss the change and, you know, curving it that wall instead. And what we discussed was it would likely be set back about 4 feet or so from the curb, so that you're not, if any of you have been to Rotten Robbie's, you're not hitting the wall as you're making the turn, and that provides an opportunity for planting in front of it with, you know, some vegetation. I know plants aren't necessarily as acoustically absorbing as people sometimes think they are, but they did talk about that, as well as potentially planting the wall with some vines and things like that. And Steve, I don't know, Steve Dines, I don't know if you're able to comment on that. I do know the construction itself would most likely be a block construction, and that was what the noise consultants requires in terms of it being at least a certain sort of density or solidness of material to be effective for the other side of that noise wall.
Yes, that's what we assumed in our modeling, was that it would just be a solid wall without any additional absorption added. That would be a possibility. There are walls that one could build that would have that function. But for the purposes of our analysis, we did not assume that would be implemented.
Okay. So I went to the car wash on Mendocino. That was kind of given as an example. And it was kind of difficult to determine the sound because they had a fan there, like a blower that kind of a marketing advertising, and then there was a lot of cars going by. Do you know if that facility has the type of silencer that you described, and could you also explain how that silencer works that will be incorporated into the car wash, or someone can explain that?
That may be one of those things best left to the applicant's team.
Yeah.
Unless Steve is feeling knowledgeable in that respect.
Tunnel vision can take this one. Yeah, so Ed Blair with Tunnel Vision. So on the blowers that are located upstairs, there's inlet baffles for sound reduction, and then there's mufflers put in the outbound, the discharge sides of the blower. So there's sound suppression both on the inlet and the outlet side of the blowers. And as well as having the producers upstairs, like no car wash really around has that. So the one at Mendocino does have the blowers upstairs, what we call producers, and it's retrofitted with the inlet and exhaust mufflers, if you will.
Okay, thank you. And then Carrie, I have a question on condition number 78, which is on page 14. And I'll wait till the commission kind of gets to that point. So 78A says the car wash and vacuum shall operate only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. There's no designation of days there. 7 a.m. seems pretty early, and I'm wondering if is there additional information that needs to be added to that, and also to the applicant, just is that the intent to have the car wash open at 7 a.m.?
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. I think that's a good question for the applicant to address in terms of what if their hours of operations, and particularly on Saturdays and Sundays, compared to weekdays, what they think the actual, and then the commission could adjust that condition if they wanted to, based on discussions with the applicant and also public comment and any other deliberations.
Do you want me to comment on that, Everett?
Yeah, please.
Our intentions are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There is a high number of cars and people that really like to get their cars washed before they either head into work or sometimes early on a weekend morning just to get their chores out of the way. So that is our preference, to be able to operate under those particular hours. And that's what we would ask for.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And just a question for the traffic consultant. So you were talking about 16 trips, I guess, for the car wash. Does that take into account customers that already are there at the tire shop or oil change, and now they're going over to the car wash, or is that considered to be just new customers that are driving off the street, going into that car wash?
Would that be a question for Mark? It's for Steve. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, that sounds like that's a question for Steve Weinberger, since it's regarding the trip generation.
Yeah, okay.
Steve, you're on mute.
Not sure if we lost him or not. I can, Chair Fernandez, if you have other questions, I can, oh, there he is.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it looks like he's having some issues.
Okay, I think I'm back now.
Okay.
Commissioner Fernandez, can you repeat your question?
Sure.
The second half cut out. Okay.
That's okay. So it was stated that there estimated 16 car trips additional for the car wash, and I'm wondering if that means that those are new customers coming in, driving off the street to the car wash, or does that include any customers that are already there for oil change or tires?
Okay, so we took a worst case estimate of trips and essentially viewed the site as a blank site and a car wash going in, and having the rates tell us, given that size of car wash, how much traffic is going to come to and from the car wash. Given the other uses, we know that there will be some commingling of trip purposes people go for a lube in a car wash. Things like that reduce the amount of new trips coming on the site. But for worst case, we assume this was an isolated site and that all the trips coming were what a car wash would generate. So that's 16 in, 16 out, 32 trips during the peak hour were estimated to be generated by the car wash. That's what we evaluated the intersection level service with that volume. But as you pointed out, there will be some commingling of trips, which will actually bring down that number. But our report looked at sort of worst case conditions, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And then Carrie, question for you regarding the city's noise ordinance, where on weekends it's like an 8 o'clock hour. Is that for noise level, or is that for, I know that certain workers, construction and so forth cannot be started till that time. How does this integrate with that noise ordinance?
Right, so we do have a noise ordinance, and because I don't ever have it memorized with all the different zones we have, I'm going to go directly to it. So the noise level standard for the commercial zone, daytime hours is 55 dBA, and that starts hold on. Daytime hour is 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. on weekdays, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturdays, and 9 to 7 on Sundays. And so this particular use would not be exempt. We do exempt some certain construction noises and things like that that are temporary in nature, not a permanent use. But this particular use would be subject to those. So that's the 8 a.m. Start time where they have the lower threshold Monday through Fridays, and then 9 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. The evening hours are past when they are proposing to operate, so that's not an issue. And I do want to note that we did work on a use permit admin review back in 2013 to deal with some noise complaints we had from Rotten Robbies. And one of the conditions we had for them was 7 a.m. in start time on weekdays in the summer months, and 8 a.m. on winter months, and just to get a light and when people are starting to do such things, and then 8:30 on Sundays. I don't know if that was related to a different noise ordinance hours. We have not updated our noise ordinance since 2013 when that was done. But that does note that yes, they were restricted to different hours on Sundays, which is a little bit consistent with the daytime hours.
And so the 78A condition is contrary to the noise ordinance, and would it?
Yeah, it actually notes that we should actually change that to an 8 a.m. start time. The evening hours won't be a problem, but the 8 a.m. on Mondays through Fridays, and then 9 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. If they could get the noise ordinance, the noise on the site down to the 45 dBA adjusted for ambient noise, which is whatever the ambient noise is plus 5 decibels. Then those earlier morning hours wouldn't be as much of an issue. But that's an excellent point, Chair Fernandez.
And that's something that, if it wasn't the case, I guess the council could consider making an exception for that, I would assume.
That would almost end up being a noise variance. I'm not sure that would be supportable.
Got it. So, okay, so that, yeah, so 78A would need to be changed on that. Okay, so that's all the questions that I have. And at this point, I would like to open it up to public comment and appreciate everybody's patience. Yes, I'm sorry, you have another question?
Yeah, I just have a few questions.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair Fernandez. And so most of my questions have been answered by the remainder of the commission. I did have some questions about water recycling and water runoff, just because that was indicated as a priority when this came up in 2017. So if a member of the applicant team could just go through what the 80% water recycling is going to look like, and if there are any other mitigation techniques that'll be in place, particularly to prevent any runoff from getting in the Laguna.
I'll let Ed answer that one.
Yeah, Ed with Tunnel Vision. We use a company's reclaim system called Freilit, who is built in Austria and world renowned. We've used it, don't want to say exclusively, but it's been proven worthy of continuing the installing of that model. It actually is at or above the 80% recapture rate. And so Tunnel Vision also takes a secondary look at how to recycle water. We actually identify it as recapturing water before it's recycled. So there's elements, tiered elements in the water process where there's rinse water that doesn't have soap suspended in it that we can use at a different part of the wash. It gives us the ability to even increase our percentage of, if you will, reclaim. And so, and then the blower system is more of a, as we've been talking about, is more of a squeegee rather than just a surface blower. It has the ability to squeegee the vehicle, which in turn retains the water in the bay. So it's a great system, and we've proven it over time to be very, very successful.
And I believe Commissioner Lindenbush was one of your questions about how stormwater would be treated, or just about the recycled water?
Yeah, I'm interested in stormwater as well. I had looked at the site, and it seemed that the drainage on both the Ford building side and the Benedetti side drains straight to the Laguna. So that's definitely an issue of concern for me.
Right, and I believe the applicant has their civil engineer here. James, are you able to address that?
Everyone, James Jensen, civil engineer. So for stormwater, every new land development project that hits particular very low thresholds of new impervious or style of development are required to comply with low impact development standards. I believe Sebastopol has adopted the Santa Rosa manual, like most of the rest of Sonoma County north of Cotati. So when we get into the stage of applying for a building permit, we will prepare what's called a stormwater low impact development submittal. It's SWLIDS is the acronym for it, and it will identify impervious areas and where those impervious areas will drain to. They'll drain to bioretention. And looking at the site plan at the end of the packet, the shaded areas are landscape opportunities, and we'll basically divide the property into maybe 4 different drainage areas. They'll go into bioretention. Bioretention constitutes a slightly depressed area. There'll probably be curb cuts in the face of curb to allow water to sheet flow into the bioretention areas. And then from there, it'll go through a medium of amended soils. Those amended soils are planted with various landscapes that can tolerate the wet feet. So what happens is the media strips constituents from the stormwater, and then the plant life over time processes those constituents into carbon. And then it just renews every year. The process just keeps going. On this particular site, I can't recall if we have subsurface storm drain already on site. I believe we do. And in that particular case, we would install perforated pipes at an elevated level in those bioretention facilities, so that once a storage volume, a retention volume below that perforated pipe, once that's full, then that satisfies what we call hydromodification. And then any excess water will still get treated through that amended soil material, and then it'll enter the storm drain system so that we're not flooding.
Oh. Hope that answered.
Okay. Did you still have any other questions?
I have some.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I actually had more questions besides just the noise. I have questions
Okay.
of the car wash itself, and then also some about traffic. So
Sure,
when
go
I
ahead.
went to visit the car wash on Mendocino Avenue, I was standing on the property to the north, and was the attendant was very nice. There were no cars there because it was an evacuation zone was going on, and the attendant turned the car wash on for me so I could hear it and watch it. And while I was standing on the property to the north, just over the fence, but pretty perpendicular to the opening, I noticed that when the soap started coming down, and the bubbles, the Lawrence Welk type bubbles were floating around, there actually was a vapor coming out from the doorway toward the east at that location. And I'm not concerned about the vapor being toxic. I'm concerned about what I've heard about it being soapy and greasy and being a nuisance on neighboring properties. And since the neighboring property, the maker unit, or perhaps another housing facility, I think the vapor could be a nuisance. So my question to you is, how far from the doorway is the soap dispenser? Is it a foot inside the doorway, do you imagine? I guess I'm talking to the tunnel vision people.
Not sure what the question is. You say, which end of the building were you standing?
I was at the entrance, and I was at the north
Yeah.
side of the entrance.
Yeah,
looking
and-
perpendicular to it.
And so you referred to bubbles. Those are foamers rather than spray nozzles.
Mm-hmm.
And so bubbles are generated with little fans up in the apparatus, and it's not pressurized chemistry, so there is no vapor. If I don't know how to really properly define the term vapor, the mist or overspray. But basically, we try to apply all of our chemistry without high pressure air driven. So that's actually, the bubbles are a good example of not atomizing the chemistry.
Right, I understand what you're saying. However, I did see vapor coming out the building, but my question is, how far from the actual physical entrance of the building is the mechanism that drops the bubbles onto the car? Is it
On that specific wash, it's about a foot and a half inside, and that is giving you bubbles, yes.
Is there any way that the entrance could be, that it could be closer, more into the building? Because I would think that since I was seeing it come out of the building, and I did see it, you should go look at it. Sometimes there is something coming out, and that concerns me. And I'm wondering whether this particular site could be designed in such a way that there was a covering on that location at the entrance, or that the soap was dispensed further inside from the exit. Are either of those solutions that might prevent me seeing that coming out of the building?
But I have a question for you. You washed it without a car in the bay. Are you correct in saying
That's
that?
right, and I was assuming that if there were a car there, there would be
Considerably
something more
less.
like bouncing, but
And yes, the equipment layout, it can be moved. There's no real standard. Mind you, this was a repurposed building. It used to be a hamburger stand and built in 1966. It came with a lot of challenges. And so one of the challenges we specifically had to address was the length of the building. So whereas the proposed building that we have here in Sebastopol is longer. So it gives you more ability to be a little more flexible in the location of your equipment.
Right, I understand that the attendant said that the building had been added to, but what you're telling me now is that the building that you're proposing for the Benedetti site is actually longer than this building? Is it
No.
possible then that the facility could either have a roof or that the soap dispenser could be located, say, 2.5 to 3 feet inside the doorway?
If it was deemed that that would be a condition of approval, then yes, we would move it in, you know, the distance that the commissioners might suggest.
Okay, because I think if you went and watched what I watched on a non-windy day, then you could imagine that on a windy day, that vapor or aerosolized, whatever it is, and I don't think it's toxic, I just think it could be a nuisance, and that's my concern, that if there's more development, or even for the maker people, that they could experience seeing this soapy, greasy material on their projects.
Kathy, can I
So-
interject a little bit?
Yeah,
Mark Reese, I think one of the things that Ed said, which will be different on our particular building, is that building there was a repurposed building. Our building is going to be designed and developed exactly for the car wash equipment. So I was actually there. I did not see any vapor on the day that I was there, but it was very busy. Cars were going in all the time. But our building will be designed to a point where we should not have any of those issues coming out either end of the building as far as that's concerned, because that building will be designed for that equipment.
okay, I hope that that's the case, and that we don't see any of that vapor coming out, because, I mean, I didn't want to see it, but I did see it, so that is a concern. My next question is, at the wash barn, there was water outside at the entrance on the ground before cars went in. So I asked the attendant why the water was there. And he said that at that site, you have a pre-wash where apparently an attendant takes a garden hose with a pressurized nozzle and washes the car off. Is that something that you would have at this car wash?
It is in the plan to have a high pressure gun at the entrance.
Do we know what kind of noise that high pressure
It-
gun makes against a car?
It's considered in the sound study that has been provided.
Okay. Also, I'm guessing that there is what I'll call an automated teller for the car wash. Is that located in the area as you enter the car wash? It looks like there's a little island there with that maybe is covered.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where that equipment is. And does that have a speaker attached to it? Does it talk to the people, or is it all?
Actually, that one does not, no.
Okay, so it's all just on a screen, the information, like a bank.
Yeah, there's no communication on those pay points.
Okay, thank you. Looking at the schematic, I'm not sure exactly where 50 feet would be, and I can't see where the sound wall ends exactly, because it looks like it goes along the property line. I just don't know how far it is, and I guess that's not really an important issue to me at the present time. My next question was about, since we no longer have the wall on the east side of the property that was originally a sound wall, is there some sort of a privacy wall? And my concern is that if there were a development on the other side of the wall, I don't think they'd want to be looking due west at the southwest edge and see cars turning that corner and going into the car wash on a regular basis. So I was wondering if there was some sort of a privacy fence along the east wall now that there's no longer a sound wall. I know that's sort of design review, but I'm thinking about it, an adjacent use in the downtown core.
Tunnel Vision knows of no such plans at this
I'm
point.
sorry,
We know of no such plans at this point, so,
for any sort of a privacy wall.
no.
Okay. So I have questions about the traffic. And again, Steve, maybe you can answer this.
Yep.
I'm reading that 78B is still confusing to me because it seems like vehicles accessing the car wash facility shall not make a left turn onto Sebastopol Avenue in order to turn left on Barnes. It means that if they're already, say, at the tire shop, they shall not exit to the highway as a left turn and then turn left into Barnes. And I'm wondering how often that would even happen. Who would do that? I feel like what we're trying to say is we don't want excessive left-hand turns on the highway. So I'm wondering, wouldn't it be better to be proactive and suggest that condition 78B? And I guess, I don't know whether I'm asking Steve or staff, would it be better to say all verbal, written, or digital instructions shall direct customers to enter and exit the car wash via Abbott and Petaluma Avenues? Because that would at least be proactive in that if you're going on the website, it will show you how to get in and out. And if someone's asking you, you'll tell them, please, come from the other direction. Not that we can affect, not that people will do what we ask them, but it seems like it's accomplishing more than just saying, don't turn left on the highway, which we know they're going to do that anyway.
Why don't I kick that to Carrie, since we did not write that condition. So Carrie, I can reply after you if need be.
Sure. And so I think I'm thinking about that condition that you proposed, Kathy, and I'm thinking, well, what if I'm getting my car washed and going to Santa Rosa? If I'm required to go out of Abbott or out Barnes, at that entry, now I'm actually adding to that congestion at that intersection. And I don't think we would want that. Like if someone's just taking a simple ride out to go to Santa Rosa, you don't want them going through that Petaluma Sebastopol Road intersection because it's going to create more traffic there.
Yeah, I guess I'm confused on what you were saying. What would create more traffic?
So were you proposing that all exit from the car wash be via the Barnes Avenue?
Not all exit, but if we were trying to prevent traffic making turns onto Sebastopol Avenue, it seems to me we would be wanting people then to use Abbott and Petaluma Avenue to avoid the congestion that we have in that short distance on basically Bodega Avenue. And that by suggesting that all spoken and written communications direct people to use that exit would encourage more people to use that exit right from the start when they go online to see how to get there. Otherwise, I don't think it's even a useful thing at all, because we're directing people not to do something that really very few people would actually do, in my opinion. But it's not a big deal.
Right, and that may be my oversensitivity to this commission's not wanting people to be taking left turns off of Sebastopol Road. How can we get people to do that? I think I don't know if there's a way to, Dave, you can think about this maybe during public comment or as we move forward, but is there a way to encourage people? And I think, I can look Mark in the face and say, hey, you have a good neighbor policy as part of this. Part of that can be, if people are going into town, have them go out the back way, the south entry but I wouldn't want people going out that south way if they were only then going to have to make 2 more right turns to get to Santa Rosa, versus just going to the current main Benedetti entrance on Sebastopol and taking the right and going to Santa Rosa. So I wouldn't want to prohibit that.
Yeah, it's just that one is in the flow on Sebastopol Avenue, whereas the other one is a stop on Sebastopol Avenue. That's how I was thinking, but I'm not a traffic designer anyway. So. My other traffic comment was regarding Linda Kelly's suggestion that they put a sign, no left turn at Sebastopol Avenue at the exit. And, I volunteered at the Legacy at the South Point Shopping Center. And I know when that one came in, they put up a no left turn sign as you exit. And now with Starbucks, there's quite a bit of traffic there. And it's not an official no left turn sign. I think it's just maybe it is, but people don't respect it. But it's nice that it's there because a lot of people do. So, and cars do stack up behind them, not people trying to turn left off the highway there. So I'm thinking that any sign that encourages people to not to do what we don't want them to do could be helpful. And just I am in support of that sign, perhaps being required at the exit. So those are my comments and questions at this point now. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners have additional follow-up questions? Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and open it up to public comment.
Okay, I can help facilitate this, and I'll look through the galleries. I see Huck, so I'll go to him first, and then I see Annabelle, and then Martin. So I will unmute Huck for now. And can you see the 3-minute timer, Huck, on the screen? And you are still muted, just so you know.
Thank you. I'm sad because I really fear that the city's being bamboozled again, just like it was by CVS and its fictional second story. I've listened to this entire evening and last episode too. And spiritual teacher Byron Katie says, argue with reality and you will lose. I'm Huck Hensley, the owner of the Ford building next door. I gave that building a deep green renovation 5 years ago, and I don't enjoy the conflict and contention of all this, but locating this mechanical car wash on the property line creates a conflict with my tenants. Due to the intrusive noise, it's going to discourage downtown housing on my property and elsewhere. It's a basic tenet of urban planning. Please don't locate conflicting uses next to each other. There is a real alternative to all this machinery. It's called an Eco-Green Auto Clean Works. It's noiseless, almost waterless. A small crew rushes around and sprays a bottle and wipes down your car, and they dry it. It takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe. You'll still have the traffic impact, but you'd have no noise. And actually watching these guys run around your car is kind of entertaining and would contribute to downtown. When I was renovating the Ford building, I relied on this report. A lot of you worked on it. It's the SDAT report, the Sustainable Design Assessment Team. And I mean, Lars and Carrie Bush and Paul and Ted and Sarah Gurney all worked on that. It's a product of thousands of hours of great intelligent input, along with 8 top-notch professionals from across the country. This is a quote from an economic activity that consumes our environment and the very things we embrace is not sustainable. This project take huge volumes of drinking water and power and sacrifice the downtown ambiance and add to traffic, all to make material objects a little shinier. Please note, nobody's brought this up. Car washes pay no sales tax. Approving this car wash would have a domino effect on downtown core properties. Any new noise generator can claim their noise will be drowned out by the car wash, so who cares? And if you're approving car washes, let's have some more. This car wash is going to be there 20, 30, 40 years from now, screeching away, ending the possibility of infill housing downtown for decades to come when you really need it. I'd say you have a choice between a car wash, downtown housing, between congestion and quieter, calmer, pedestrian-friendly, livable downtown, between downtown that serves cars or downtown that serves people. No one really needs a car wash, but everybody needs housing. I hope you have the courage to envision Sebastopol as it ought to be and build that vision.
And Huck, your time is up. Thank you.
May wisdom guide you.
Thank you.
All right, and Annabelle, you are unmuted.
Okay, hi everyone.
And can you see the timer?
Yes, I can see the timer. Hi everyone, my name is Annabelle. I'm 18 years old. And I really appreciate Huck mentioning the vision of a future Sebastopol because I am going to be in this town for longer than most of you and would like to envision a Sebastopol that is just and values the local ecology. And I am very concerned about this car wash because there's mention of soap bubbles, of soap and of lubricants and all of these chemicals. And actually, have we even studied these chemicals to know if they are toxic or not? Actually, most of these chemicals that will be used for the car wash have not had sufficient studies and data gathered to know how they will affect the local life and groundwater. And even if 80% of the water is recycled and reused, that still leaves 20% that goes to groundwater pollution, affecting our drinking water, and goes into the laguna, which is a preservation. And also, sorry, just need to look at my notes. Also, these chemicals go into the toxic waste center eventually, but the toxic waste center is not designed to ever eliminate chemicals. So these chemicals are going to be in our environment and bioaccumulate in animals and of the other life in our community. These are synthetic man-made chemicals that we actually don't know a lot about. And car washes also use an obscene amount of resources, 40 gallons on average per car. California is in a drought and we're in a climate crisis. We do not need a car wash that sucks up all of these resources. And to put up a concrete wall to eliminate sound, well, have we thought about how concrete is one of the major fossil fuel uses, how we produce concrete? And not only that, the whole car wash is going to have to be paved, which prevents the soil from sequestering carbon. It's 2020, we're in a climate crisis, and the city of Sebastopol passed a climate emergency resolution. And I would like to remind the commission that you've been appointed by this elected city council that approved this climate emergency resolution. And I think that it's time to think beyond regulations and fitting within the bureaucracy of what companies would like to how companies would like to profit, and think what good can we actually do and how we can actually envision a community that works for us all. So thank you. And I would like more than 3 minutes, but my time is up.
Thank you for respecting that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Martin next, and then Jim Wheaton, Charles Dunleavy, Leslie Winter, and Dave Hadley, and I'll just go down that row.
Okay.
All right, good evening. Thank you for your time. Like Huck, I'm going on my 5th hour of listening to delineation here. And it feels, look, there may be no standards, or the standards may be, well within for decibels or traffic. But the fact is, we're listening to a lot of consultants that are likely on the applicant's payroll. And so you've got a question. And when it comes to chemicals, I think Annabelle makes a really good point. The fact is, you may say, and you may vehemently nod your head no as she talks about toxic chemicals, but DuPont lied about Teflon for 60 years. And the fact is, the science just doesn't really agree with you. I've sat across from the Rod and Robbie car wash, and it makes eating outside at Dee's Diner unpleasant. Every time the industrial fan turns on, it's disruptive. You can't have a conversation. The same will be true for people at this building, including neighbors who come down for Chimera. One thing I wanted to bring up, I noticed on page 31 of the application, it says that Exhibit 4 was written by Patrick Slater. He was the architect of the project plans. I'm very curious if this is the same Patrick Slater who is the mayor of Sebastopol. If so, I would hope that would have been mentioned, risking impropriety if not. So that was concerning. I posted on Nextdoor about 4 hours ago that there's a proposed car wash down here that could significantly increase traffic and noise in this area next to the Redota Trail, next to the Laguna Habitat, at the busiest intersection in town. And more than 20 people agreed and said that they came out not in favor of this project. I'll read just a couple of the names: Jane Eagle, Gil Cruz, Jocelyn Wilson, Alan Green Jr., Carrie Ann Tomlin, Robin Morton. Sherry Kearney says, in my opinion, 2 car washes are quite enough in our small town. Sounds like a bad idea to me and doesn't exactly add to the ambiance of downtown Sebastopol. Jessica Quigley said no. Richard Bland, Debbie Turner, Megan Birchfield, Linda Lynch. Paula Sommer said, with all the backed up traffic on Highway 12, the size of Sebastopol, and the fact that we already have 2 car washes, I say, why on earth would we need yet another car wash? First CVS in our quaint little town, and now another car wash? Crazy. And then 3 exclamation points. Penelope Butterfield, Brian Tewitt, Lynn Joachim says, I won't make it to the 7 p.m. meeting, but I am not in favor of the car wash. There's over 20 people saying no. The fact is, downtown Sebastopol is quaint, and that's the reason we love it. That's the reason we all live here. That's the reason we work here. The last thing we need is something that's going to make it noisier, that could possibly be throwing off vapors, and is going to increase traffic. You know, we may say that, hey, we don't actually know, it's going to be insignificant, but the fact is it will increase noise and it will increase traffic. Is that the direction we want to go? And I hear from these consultants that it's going to be, you know, insignificant, and yet that's what every consultant says about every project, and I just don't buy it. So modifications are insufficient. This project is the wrong project in the wrong spot, and it presents real increases to noise and traffic in this community. Dozens of residents are opposing it, and it should be denied. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
All right, and next up we have Jim Wheaton. And Jim, I'm trying to find you to unmute you if needed. If not, just go ahead and unmute yourself and go for it.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Jim Wheaton. I have sort of 2 hats on. I am a board member of the Chimera Makerspace. We've been there for 7 years. And I'm also a previous tenant in the upstairs office where Martin is now, and worked in that office for 2 years above Benedetti. So I have a lot of experience about what it's like in that space. I will start up by saying I do appreciate the mitigation effects. I wasn't aware of the curved wall and the sound studies saying there will be less noise at the higher level, but I still don't think it's a great project in the long-term interest of Sebastopol. I know that decibel numbers aren't really indicative of how annoying a sound is. Think of a leaf blower versus something else. And if every 2 minutes or so you've got a motor turning on all day long, or maybe not every 2 minutes all day long, but during peak times, I find that really annoying. I got used to Benedetti's, and I take my car there, and I appreciate their local business. And I got used to little zzz, zzz sounds, and you know, the makerspace makes noise, and sometimes we're out there grinding. So there's a certain level of industrialness of this whole area that has to be considered as that's okay. But the Class A kind of office space upstairs, I'm sure will be impacted when you have that window open. I had to shut it several times when cars are idling or other noises come by. So it will have an impact on offices at that level. I know that for Chimera, since we do make noise and we have people out there and we're welding and grinding sometimes, you know, we can't complain too much. We picked a spot that was downtown as kind of semi-industrial, but I know that having a housing there, if it's possible, I'm all in favor of the infill, and I think this would negatively impact that possibility. And my last point is, I know that we've had Linda Collister, the Healdsburg EPA person down, and we can't even run our hose legally on the back lot because there's a drain outside Chimera that goes directly to the lagoon. And you're not allowed to put anything down there. And we had to come up with a plan about how we're going to get metal shavings, you know, staged in an area and have berms and try to really protect the Laguna. And I know there's a lot of water recycling, but I'm curious whether or not there's any direct drainage to the Laguna. And if so, that's got to be looked at more carefully. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so next we have Charles Dunleavy, and then Leslie Winters after that. Charles, I'm unmuting you.
Yeah, I'm just I'm excited to be able to have one-stop shopping. You know, be able to take my vehicle in, get my oil changed, get regular service done, and be able to have my car washed at the same time. I mean, it's convenient. It's not another trip out of my day, or out of, more importantly, my day off that I have to deal with yet again another vehicle issue. So, you know, my big plus here is convenience, and that's all I really have.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Leslie Winter next. Leslie, I am unmuting you.
Hi, good evening. I would have to agree with Charlie Dunleavy in the fact that having it all in one spot does make it extremely convenient. I live on Bodega Avenue, and I like to keep my trips in and out of Sebastopol down to a minimum, especially because I have little ones that are usually going everywhere with me when I leave the house. So I'm sure you can imagine that being able to not only have my oil changed, my tires serviced, but being able to wash my car all at once would be more than convenient. Just to kind of step back for a moment, speak on what the gentleman said about the noise and how it would be a concern and how it could impact housing. I mean, I know that when I've gone to Benedetti's before to get my oil changed, you know, I personally can definitely hear noise coming from welding and grinding at the businesses in the area. So I don't know if a car wash is going to be louder than a grinder, but I think that there's some very beneficial points to having one locally here in town. Thank you.
All right, and then David Hanley, I'm unmuting you.
Well, hello. I would like to start by saying I'm sitting here with my home air conditioner. It's 35 decibels, so it's really not very loud and really not very annoying. So 70, it's not horrible. Things can be installed on the wall like split stone, which will keep it much quieter, like everything on every freeway in America, and that will drop the noise level. Secondly, Huck sounded like he was trying to be a little selfish there and speaking about his property. That sounds like he wants to sell to build housing. Understand that. I'd do the same if I was him. But to Annabelle, the average household, each person will use 100 gallons of water a day. So I don't know how many houses they're planning on putting in there, but you know, with 100 people, that's 1,000 gallons a day, blasting down into the sewage systems of our and not helping out. We have all these things called bioswales, which is the new construction. I deal with it every day in my construction deal, and this place will have bioswales, permeable concrete. Things will go in through filters, through not chemicals, through natural processes of cleanliness, and put pure, clean water back into the environment and back into the water table. So I highly recommend, letting the water run out, because that's how this stuff works. I've put in millions of feet of bioswales, and that's what it's designed to do. It puts it back into the water table and back into the environment clean and clear. So all those concerns seem a little silly to me, that if you don't research it, you probably shouldn't talk about it, but I could be wrong. What else do I have? Oh, yeah. So that's really it for me. I think it's a good thing. I've been to I built Benedetti tires 100 years ago whenever it came in. I've been there hundreds of times. And one suggestion would be for the traffic people, put a keep clear sign at the Benedetti entrance, so the people of Sebastopol will be thoughtful enough to maybe stop and let you in and out. And it would really alleviate most of the traffic problems in that whole area. It's been bothering me for, 30 plus years. And I just don't understand why people won't stop and let you in and out. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry about that background noise. We have 3 additional public commenters with their hands raised. I have Tanya next, and then Russ and Nadine. And Tanya, I am unmuting you now.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi, my name is Tanya Shatila, and as a resident of this community, I honestly find it a bit atrocious and completely out of character that the city of Sebastopol would even consider a project such as this one for what is really its downtown corridor. Many of the folks on this call have already called out a number of critical issues that should be taken into account when considering the feasibility and really the appropriateness of this proposed car wash, mainly noise, traffic, and other environmental concerns as well. I think it's clearly apparent to everyone on this call and in this community that we are all drawn to Sebastopol because of its small town feel, a town generally void of big box retailers and big city businesses. And truly, this community already has enough car washes. And honestly, this project feels more like something our neighboring cities like Santa Rosa would consider. And as someone who also works in this community right behind the proposed project site, I'm also extremely concerned about the noise that's going to be associated with this project. I'm a writer by trade, a creative who values a quiet, peaceful space to work. And the thought of a car wash and the humming of drying stations all day, every day is really very concerning to me. And I really question the impact a sound wall would actually have, not to mention that sound walls are generally an eyesore. And think about the trail that this project would border. And finally, I just have to end with really what is my biggest concern, which was brought up on this call tonight, the fact that one of the highest ranking city officials is apparently an architect on this project. Is this really true? I hope that this will be addressed tonight. And if so, why wasn't this clearly stated before? If this is truly the case, it's very disappointing this wasn't divulged sooner and represents a total lack of transparency here. And as a former reporter for major Southern California newspapers, such as the Los Angeles Times, this honestly reeks of unethical conflicts of interest and really makes me question whether this project even is being considered for the good of the community or for the good of the interested parties. And look, I also understand that these are very difficult economic times for everyone, every municipality, every business, but please let's also consider the integrity of this community as a whole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Russ and then Nadine and a couple others as well. We'll get to you, but Russ, I'm unmuting you now. Russ, can you start again? Yeah, you were muted, so if you could start again, that'd be great.
Yeah, Russ Taylor. You know, I'm born in Sebastopol, raised in Sebastopol, pretty much 50 years of my life. And, you know, I've seen the town go through many changes. Definitely not the town I grew up in. But, you know, the things that are being addressed, the water and the potential of where that water is going into the Laguna, you know, what about the consideration of everybody in their driveway washing their car, all the soap, other chemicals, oils from the car running down into the gutter, into the storm drains, and then into the Laguna with no process of treatment or anything. And here's an opportunity for people to avoid that and maybe reduce that. And another note with the Ford building next door, you know, that building was remodeled and those offices were added after Benedetti Tire was already there. So that, well knowing that there was noise currently there when they designed that and built it. And so the minor added noise of adding a car wash to the existing facility, you know, people moving in there, they know what they're moving in next to. And, you know, doesn't make much sense to me, because if they were concerned about it, then why build the offices there? And, you know, why would people move into them if they can see there's a facility that makes noise next door? You know, and like was mentioned earlier, you know, the convenience of being able to get your car serviced and have it washed, have the oil changed all in one spot, not leaving Sebastopol and going to another town. The option of, you know, while you're waiting to get your oil changed or your car serviced, people have the ability to go across the street to the Barlow and utilize those businesses over there and keep them going in these times. And I just see it an opportunity for growth of what Sebastopol actually, you know, could use. And just all around a good, I think, idea. I think everybody's taking the noise a little excessively. And it's not been, based on studies, and they're just assuming there's going to be noise. And so everybody's getting a little up about that. And sound wall, the sound wall, might be spending a whole bunch of money for no reason. It might be something that, why not wait and see what the sound is, and then if it is a little excessive, add the sound wall after that. So, I hope everybody can see that, not to just take the extreme side of what might happen, but the other side of what the possibility might be. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Nadine next. Nadine, I'm unmuting you.
Hello. My name is Nadine Sanders, and I'm a tenant in the Ford building lot. And I went and did my homework after the last meeting I sat in on at the Wash Barn. And I too asked a lot of questions of the manager there. And I don't know if this will be brought up if you approve it or even if you don't approve it. One thing I haven't heard talked about is, I would imagine when we're living in drought-filled California and our water tables are going down, I think it would be very important for the people who are going to approve it or disapprove it to know exactly how many gallons are used per car that goes through. And knowing that if this car wash people like it and successful, there'll be more and more water used. And I live in Belmont Terrace, actually, when I'm not at my studio here in downtown Sebastopol. And certainly our water, Belmont Terrace water entity, we have to, do all kinds of things to show that we are not wasting water. So my biggest thing is you really need to know the hard facts of the water use. And you really need to look at what kinds of things do we want in our town, given the fact that we live in drought-filled California. One thing is, I washed my car once a year until I got married. Now my husband washes a little more, but my car runs perfect by getting its oil changed and getting its tires rotated. I don't give a darn how my car looks. So I'm just giving that perspective. But the question I think you really need to find out is how many gallons per car? Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you, Nadine. And then we have Lisa and then Joe. Lisa, I'm unmuting you now.
There. Okay, I unmuted myself too. So I work in the Ford building, and the company that I work for is actually a major tenant of that building. And so we have offices upstairs and we have offices downstairs that will be right next to the proceedings of the car wash. And I am concerned about sound and traffic. And what I'm concerned about is somebody mentioned it earlier, actually, is the on and off and on and off. As far as that being a distraction for people who are doing accounting and thinking work and people that are doing design work right up against that sound. And I think that, yeah, we knew Benedetti was there when we moved in, but we didn't know there would be more sound in addition to that. And I do have a question for Steve Daines, if he's available.
If you could just ask the question now during public comment, and we'll record them and see if you can answer after.
Great. Okay. Well, my question, I kind of wanted a back and forth. My question was, I thought that he said that his baseline numbers were done in June, that he took his baseline readings for the sound levels in June. And I wasn't sure if I heard that right or not. And so if I did hear that right, I had a comment I wanted to make about that. But I think that once the horse is out of the barn, it's out of the barn, and it's just very hard. I looked at the diagrams and I looked at a lot of the information, and it's hard to see how big of an impact it'll be, but it seems to me that there will be an impact on the offices that are next door to the car wash.
Thank you. We have Joe next and then Carol. Joe, I'm unmuting you.
Good evening. I'm kind of outside walking around, so it's a little dark. I've been listening for a while tonight. I do not live in Sebastopol, but I do come to Sebastopol quite frequently for work and personal reasons. So that means I'm impacted by Highway 12 and Main Street in and out. And I heard a lot of things mentioned about the traffic tonight, but all the construction over the last, I don't know, decade and a half, and they didn't make a bigger portion of that 2 lanes to begin with. I mean, that in itself could have solved the traffic questions that we're talking about tonight. So I don't think it's on Benedetti necessarily to take on the entire traffic burden. And to just comment on environmental projects, they don't always work out. There's a big one we're all familiar with the SMART train in Sonoma County. I'd say that was a step backwards, although it's progressive and a good idea and could have been a good thing in this county. I think it set us back and didn't do what it was set to accomplish and has been nothing but a nuisance. And what kind of noise was producing all those, or building all those Barlow buildings? I think that construction to build all those businesses over there that everybody's defending is substantially greater than a car wash operating. And to comment about the car wash over at Rotten Robbie's, I think Benedetti's operations with better quality materials and a better handling of the water and disposal of all the ingredients is probably much safer for the environment. So I think Benedetti's pulling service away from Rotten Robbie's, encouraging more people. And then I think a couple of people, I think Charles was one of the people to mention an all-in-one stop. I have a work service vehicle and 2 personal vehicles I service with Benedetti. So I know for myself, I wouldn't have to go to another car wash. I don't do it in my own front yard just because I think a gentleman a couple of minutes ago mentioned, I don't want that waste going in front of my yard. I don't want to be responsible for anything coming off my car that could go down the drains that the city could find something wrong with, and then I'm accountable for something I don't know I'm doing wrong. I feel much safer just disposing of all my oil and anything all in one. So I think while people mention negative environmental impacts, I think the potential could have more positive environmental impacts with bringing people from doing it at their own homes to Benedetti and encouraging more people to not change their own oil, because I don't know if every resident properly disposes of their oil, but we can trust that Benedetti does it properly, as they have some pretty big restrictions to follow being a business, or they would get fined pretty heavily. So I just feel like, they can't really take on all the burdens for each and everything pointed their way. And I've heard quite a few people comment and disregard on sound walls and stuff. And if you really don't know anything about sound walls, I don't know how you discredit them either. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Carol and then Tammy. Carol, I'm unmuting you.
Yes, so my name is Carol. I am a resident of Sebastopol. I've lived here for a long time. I actually moved here to raise my children here in this lovely town, which I absolutely adore. I believe that putting the car wash at Benedetti's is, I believe it's a good idea. I think Charles had said earlier it's a one-stop shop, which would not only help, our county and our city, but while we're waiting to go get our, while we're waiting to get our tires rotated and our oil changed and then go get our car wash, I think Russ had said it good when he said we could go walk over and support our local Barlow. We could go over and support, our little town. I keep hearing we're such a little town, which is really nice because we could walk to these little places and support Sebastopol while we are getting serviced at Benedetti's. As far, I believe it was also Russ that said something about us washing our own vehicles in our driveways and not knowing what we're actually putting into our system, which then goes into the Laguna. And with the actual car wash, they will be recycling and doing everything that they need to do. I just think that it's a better, safer solution for those of us who live here in town. And to be quite honest, I don't want to go out of our town and go give our revenue to another city. So I definitely agree with Benedetti's.
Thank you. Tony, I'm unmuting you.
Hi, Tony, longtime listener, first time caller. Just want to kind of put my 2 cents here. I don't live in Sebastopol. I do frequent in Sebastopol for work and personal reasons. Did want to state, yeah, environmentally, I do feel that going with an up-to-date, more state-of-the-art style car wash would benefit environmentally, opposed to standard car washes or those quick throw up car washes that you see at gas stations where, you know, there's no real reclaim or reuse of the water that goes through those. As for traffic, that's always been an issue for me. Any which way you cut it through Sebastopol during peak hours, you're going to hit traffic. There's car wash or no car wash, you're going to hit traffic, especially right through downtown. That's an issue that's been a problem. As for noise, Sebastopol is a small town with a lot of different types of businesses. So you're going to get noise. It's a small town. You have a lot of different types of businesses right next to each other. I do feel that having the one-stop shop does make it a lot safer. All of those type of, oils and chemicals that are being disposed of are being disposed of properly, reclaimed properly, opposed to, like somebody else mentioned, having them wash away from your driveway right into a drain. Losing oil and things like that. I mean, Benedetti is a staple in Sebastopol. It has been for a long time. I'm not opposed to it. I do like to see local businesses opposed to corporations like Rotten Robbie's or other corporations taking business away from local businesses. So I'm sorry that you built, it does seem like a lot of bickering with the next door neighbor, but I'm sorry that you guys renovated and built offices next to a industrial type facility. I mean, that's just the choice that you made, whoever owns that building. But yep, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
All right, and sure, I believe that is, I'm going through the gallery. If you have a picture and you have not commented and want to, if you can raise your hand. I do not see any additional public comment at this time. If you do not have video and wish to comment, if you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Okay. I'd like to bring it back to the commission, and I propose that we take a 10-minute break. It's 9:34, so back at just call it 9:45. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
A lot going on. I didn't think I did very well, but other people that came on after me were commenting for what I said.
I left. I didn't. I'm nervous.
No, you shouldn't have left because you were my energy.
Oh,
Because
well,
you
you
were here
should've told
helping
me.
me. Well, I'm nervous and focused on this. I'm not gonna, and I'm on video camera. I'm like, hey, come back.
I was like, I better leave.
Do I get a vote?
Okay, we have everyone back, hopefully. All right, so I'm going to bring this item back to commission. Thank you. Bring this meeting back to commission for any final questions or additional questions that might have come up after public comment. And after that, then give every person an opportunity to speak or about the project. So go ahead and raise your hand if you have an additional question. Okay.
Is that Kathy does?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Unmute. I know that we can often talk about the conditions of approval. Can we talk about the mitigation measures? I'm sorry, it's, yeah, mitigation measures that's on page 5 or 10 of your document. I wanted to ask about NOI-1. Prior to issuing the building permit, the applicant is supposed to prove that there'll be noise levels no greater than 77 dBi at a distance of 10 feet. The existing documents are proving that. Is that what we're saying? This staff, I guess, Harry?
Yes, ma'am. The existing documents. Yeah, that would be the mitigation measures in the environmental document, set the standards by which in addition to the conditions of approval, the standards by which the project will be built and operated. So did I get your question? Did I understand your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we're required to use those numbers. We can't change. I mean, it seems so odd that the science, the recording and the study that they did is exactly what our documents say. Seem kind of strange. So they're just trying to meet that standard. I guess I'm suspicious, but I just wanted to know.
Steve Daines, would you like to answer that, please?
Yes, gladly. The numbers in the mitigation measure refer directly to the noise levels produced by the blower dryer system specified for the car wash after introduction of the silencer. So those levels are not just, those aren't calculated levels, those are levels that would be generated by the dryer based on the information provided by the manufacturer. So the mitigation measure is intended to imply that the silencer be correctly installed to meet the noise levels suggested by the manufacturer's documentation.
Okay, and so that first mitigation is because they've added the silencers. So the second mitigation, we're talking about still a 6-foot barrier. And I don't see any, and now I think we should change that to say a 10-foot barrier, but I don't see any information saying what it will accomplish or the minimum that we expect it to accomplish. And I was wondering whether we could require that with the 10-foot barrier written into this mitigation measure, that it's supposed to take us down to 60. Less than 60 is what I was hearing. And I just, can we do that? Is that something that we would do?
No, I think that's perfectly reasonable. The mitigation measure that we have here was the original one that went with the original study. And the project has evolved since then.
Right.
Let me summarize. There's 3 different ways to mitigate an impact. One of them is to change the project. And that's what the applicant is proposing now, which is to change the project to alter the wall that was originally proposed to address not only the ground floor use, but also the second floor use. So yes, as the commission discusses, I will make some adjustments to that mitigation measure and share that with the commission, should the commission act to recommend approval tonight to the city council.
Okay, and you feel comfortable using the new figure of 60 at that, so that they would still, the wall would be required then at final inspection to accomplish the 60 dBi.
What I suspect that the city would do would be to, prior to the issuance of the building permit, they would assess the noise with the actual design that's going in place.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay, my other questions about the answered. I had concerns if we could add a condition to 78E to say that if any equipment changed or was remodeled or added to, that it would be required to meet the same sound standards as the approval, or need to come back to for a CUP condition, CUP conditions of permit. Is that something that we could add, Gary or Dave?
Yes, if the commission so chooses to add a specific requirement, that yes, the commission could. I would just suggest that we look real carefully at the wording so we don't regulate ourselves into a corner that we can't get out of.
Well, we wouldn't want it to be noisier.
Well, and that's correct.
And that's what we've experienced before, was the builder modified something and then people were even more upset.
Yeah, Commissioner, as I sit here and listening to the question, the future project, if they change it, it would still have to comply with the standards in the initial study. Or if it didn't, if it say they were proposing to make things worse, the city would be in a position to have them go through and reevaluate the noise impacts in this case, because I think that's what you're concerned with.
Yes, I'm thinking of 10 years down the line.
Yeah, the project, yes, all future projects would have to comply with the standards in either the initial study or the conditional use permit. You are correct.
And I was wondering whether there was any way we could get some sort of a guaranteed DBI level reading for the makerspace as well. And that would be the area to the south. I don't see that mentioned, or am I wrong, that mentioned specifically the area to the south. I guess they're talking about addition, that's NOI 2, where they specifically mention south from the adjacent commercial building. I guess I'm asking if the 60 dBi apply to that site.
I'm not sure what a DBI is.
I'm sorry, a DBA.
Okay. I know Steve is here and can give us all a well-informed answer. There are different measurements for sound. There's a spot measurement, and then there's various forms of average measurements over time.
Right.
So
I would think that the spot measurement would be important for a neighbor living next door. So I guess that's what I'm asking for, not the averaged.
I'm gonna have to leave this one to Carrie to answer. She knows the noise ordinance better than I do.
Right, so our requirement is at the property line, and it is, measured at the property line, not interior to either of the properties. Steve, are you able to help with this question? So I'm not quite sure I understand. We do have, so the way our noise ordinance works, let me just state this and have Steve follow up on. If you don't have any noise exceeding the noise ordinance from ambient noise, then that's set anywhere along the property line. It is, in this case, the ambient noise allows them to do a higher level based on the ambient noise is already exceeding the noise limit level on the site. And so that allows for a 5 decibel, which is not a huge amount, but it's a 5 decibel is what it ends up being over the ambient noise added to it. And Steve, can you add a little bit to that?
Yes, so referring back to the noise survey that we did conduct, we found that the average hourly noise level during weekdays during hours of operation. The proposed hours of operation would be 57 dB, so that would exceed the municipal code limit by 2 dB, which would bring up then the limit to 62 that the car wash would not be to exceed. And on Saturdays, we found the average hourly noise level during hours of operation was 56 dBA LEQs, so hourly average noise level. So then that would correspond to a limit of 61 dBA on Saturdays. And referring back to the model noise levels that we determined with the introduction of the 10-foot curved wall at the southern facade of the Ford building, the maximum, the highest expected hourly average noise level would be 58 dB, below both of the weekday and weekend limits set by the municipal code.
Yeah, and that's again an average over large trucks making noise and what's normally there on any day when the car wash isn't moving. So
I can maybe specify that our analysis was a very conservative analysis, assuming that the car wash was going to be in continuous operation simultaneously with all of the vacuum stations. So it would really truly be representative of an absolute worst case noise scenario with all operational sources of noise at the site occurring simultaneously.
thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner, any other questions? You see any, Carrie?
I do not see any, Chair Fernandez.
Okay. All right. There were a couple of questions that were brought up at the public comment that we wanted to address. So, Carrie, you can take the first one.
Sure. So I know there was I'm assuming, I didn't write them down in order, so you can tell me if I get the right first one or not. One of the questions that I got was, jotted down, was when the noise, ambient noise readings were done. And this was actually an interesting thing because they were planning to do them, I think the 3rd or 4th week of March. And of course, the shelter in place order came in, and so that did not seem appropriate. We did have them wait until things had started to open up again. I believe it was June, and Steve, I don't know if you were able to look up the exact date of, or know exactly when you did those measurements.
Yes, our measurements began on June 4th and concluded on June 9th.
Okay, so again, we sort of figured that that was still probably conservative. We weren't back to full normal yet, but there was, you know, schools were out, or they were still doing classes remotely, and essential businesses were operating at that time. Some restaurants had started to open in town and things like that with outdoor, but there still wasn't quite as much activity as there is today. So those readings are still a little bit conservative potentially, but we felt it was appropriate enough to move forward with it.
There's also a question regarding the architect on this project. It is Patrick Slater. It's on all the documents. He is on City Council, but this will be going to City Council, and of course we expect him to recuse himself from the discussion, so he won't have a say as far as or a vote on this project. So, but it's clearly stated on all the documents. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I will just add to that. As staff, we before we could suggest it, he had noted that he was not going to be a presenter, and obviously he's not a presenter at this meeting, to remove himself from that perception, even though this is an advisory body.
You know, the situation is not, Mr. Chairman, is not unusual in small towns where you know, most of your elected officials are business people, either that or they're retired. So it's not unusual to have a member of the commission or the council who has business in the design and development fields to have projects coming before the body. And as long as that person has kind of keeps themselves out of the process, doesn't confuse their private self and their public self, there really is no conflict. And the mayor so far hasn't interjected himself into this process at all.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of that either. Yes, Commissioner Lynn Bush.
I just want to state for the record, with full understanding that Mayor Slater would recuse himself. I think public concern might have been connected to the fact that Mayor Slater did respond to some questioning in the first installment of our hearing. So just to state that for the record, I understand that he is fully within his right to be, exercising his professional life as architect on this project and will be recusing himself, but just so that is stated.
Thank you for that. Okay. Right, so no other questions. We'll bring it back for any comments, deliberation. So we could either entertain a motion now and then have discussion, or we can just go ahead and get comments. I'll just go down the line on that. So start out with Vice Chair Fritz.
Thanks. So I guess, I'll just state what I stated the last meeting. I mean, I did go to the Wash Barn on Mendocino and kind of observe that. I thought it was fairly loud at the exit. I mean, I appreciate the revised sound wall design. I think that will help. And I appreciate the sound study. And again, the applicant's willingness to kind of work with the redesign of the site to prevent sound from impacting the second floor neighbors directly. But still overall, I think that, as I said last time, that our general plan and our revision of the zoning code, and just as Huck mentioned, the SDAT and things that we've been doing in this community have been really trying to focus change our downtown to become a more pedestrian friendly, mixed use, vibrant place. And I don't think expanding automotive uses in our downtown core is appropriate. I think Pat brought up some interesting points that I also had pointed out at our first meeting about some strangeness in the table in the zoning code about automotive uses and what's allowed downtown and what's conditionally permitted. And it's a little funny, but again, it is a conditional use permit. It's for us to determine if this is an appropriate use for that site. I don't think an automotive use is appropriate in the downtown core with idling cars and it's just not appropriate. And I'm not supportive of the variance request. The variance was clearly, the floor area ratio was clearly put into the zoning code because we wanted to encourage more high intensity uses downtown. And this clearly is not a high intensity use downtown. The fact that, and I'm a little puzzled by the variance language. Again, as Pat pointed out earlier, just trying to look for it here, how that was worded. I agree. I think it's worded very strangely that basically they're saying, well, because the use as a car wash, clearly a car wash would not have a floor area ratio of 1 because it's only a car wash. I mean, that's not, in my mind, that's not an excuse for not complying with the requirement for a floor. I think it's just the wrong use. That's why a floor area ratio of 1 will not work on this project. You could say anything with a low floor area ratio. I want to, do a CVS downtown. I want to make a CVS because it has a low floor area ratio. I'm not really required to comply with the floor area ratio requirement. I just don't understand that logic. And I think that, clearly we want more intensive use downtown, and this is not intensive use. And I'm just not really in favor of the project. And I guess I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. And Carrie, just clarification. So since we're simply, or not simply, but we're making a recommendation to council. So if our recommendation is to approve, it continues, not approve, it still continues. to council. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So the way our code is written, and this was changed in 2018, that if there is a entitlement that requires a higher body, all of the decisions related to that, except for design review and tree removal, which are a separate process, are determined by that highest body. Highest body. So that would all be from the city council.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to clarify that. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you, because like I said, that is a change from like when we did the Hotel Sebastopol, where you did certain items, but then they did certain items. So it was a change in 2018.
Okay. Commissioner Haug.
I feel that the applicant has worked hard on the sound mitigation part of this. For me, I am more concerned about the variance and the zoning issues that have been brought up by Commissioners Fritz and Wilson. I'm also concerned about traffic. I think, you know, this is obviously a proposal in the hopes of making money. And so that would require more trips to the car wash than less. So I think that if they're projecting 16 new trips with the car wash, there will be some overlap with existing customers. But in my mind, you're going to have existing customers plus car wash people. So I would conservatively think that, you know, throughout the day, it would be, you know, easily 20, 25 cars entering, which means you'd have, you know, if you have 25 cars entering, that's 50 entrances and exits an hour potentially, which is, you know, one every minute or so. And I think unless there's, and I also agree with the person who commented that it's not Benedetti's responsibility to solve the traffic issues in Sebastopol. That's obviously something that needs to be looked at and addressed as a community in a much more thoughtful, long-term way. But adding a car wash will definitely increase traffic in an area that already suffers from congestion, and I'm not sure how to solve the overall grid planning. Like, that's my question to the traffic consultant, was about time lights. Like, I think maybe there's a way we can look at timing lights throughout the downtown corridor to slow traffic to 20, 25 miles an hour, but to keep it moving instead of stopping and starting, but that's not being addressed at this point. So my concern are traffic. I think, like I said, that they've done a good job in terms of trying to mitigate the sound. But if we are looking at increasing density in downtown Sebastopol, and we establish this business that increases traffic, how will that impact if we want to start doing more infill in downtown? So I guess I'm just looking more long range on that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kelly?
Okay. I agree wholeheartedly with Vice Chair Fritz in his comments. I think it's going to discourage doing some needed housing, mixed use, especially to the east and the south. I agree with the comments about the issues around the variance and definitions. I think the sound wall mitigation is a good start. I'm concerned about the sound to the south of the car wash and southeast. I'm especially still concerned about what's going to happen at Barnes. And I just know that when I go to work, people want to be considered and let them turn left in front of them from traffic coming from the east. So it slows up 2 lanes of traffic. And I just think it's really bad for our first responders and our times to be able to get through. See else. And I didn't know that there wasn't any sales tax generated, so that's interesting. And I am concerned about our water use in town. We're on our own wells. And I know it's a high percentage of recycled, but there still will be some, and I didn't hear the answer to how much water per gallons, and maybe I missed that. I do like the project, though, in terms of all of the most modern types of equipment and being able to get it more and more green as we go along. I just think it's the wrong place. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Commissioner Dauch?
There we go. So, sorry, I just had to run across the room. I, listened carefully to the concerns and the additional information from the consultants. Been very helpful, and the questions have been addressed really well. So I've appreciated that side of things. The sound mitigation, I'm pretty happy with. The traffic mitigation or the traffic study, I agree. I think there is room for concern, but I also think the addition of the Abbott exit and entrance, it offsets the concerns along Sebastopol Avenue. So I don't have any real concerns with traffic. And I feel this is an appropriate use. We have an automotive use in this location. The very nature of that use means you're not going to get the floor area ratio. And to effectively deny this business owner the ability to maximize his business on his property or his lot, I feel he has the right to this in the zoning, and I think he's doing everything he can to be a good citizen here and to offer a good service. So I feel it is appropriate. I recognize the concerns of Paul Fritz and the work that the organization that he has worked with are doing, and I understand the thrust of that, but it doesn't exclude this kind of use. It doesn't need to exclude this kind of use. It needs careful, but this kind of use does need careful consideration, as it's, I think, being given tonight. The zoning code question that Commissioner Wilson brought up, I think is a good one, and I think there's frankly a poorly written delineation between the two uses there. And if my memory serves, it is really about whether sales can occur in, automotive sales can occur in Zone M, which was specifically something we did not want to see when we looked at that. It's clumsily written because, of course, the automotive service repair should be one line item and automotive sales should be another. And if that were the case, they would both be allowed in M and downtown, one by permit, one by use permit. And sales would only be allowed in downtown, not in M. So I think that is the intent of our zoning code. And so I agree with the interpretation there. I also agree with the variance based on the fact on what is there now. That unless the intent is to have Benedetti's close and to build, apartments or storefronts with housing behind or something like that. It's unreasonable to expect an FAR of 1 on that site, given the use that is there and the use that is allowed there. So while I fully understand the argument that says, well, it's in the code and therefore it has to be done. Well, the whole point of a variance is for circumstances like this, where it's extremely difficult or onerous or even impossible to meet FAR without wholesale change to the usage of the given piece of land. So I am in support of recommending this go forward to the City Council, where I'm sure it will be given the same level of scrutiny, and they will have the benefit of our 5 hours or whatever it is of deliberation and consideration, I hope. I think the one item that I think needs addressing probably by the council is the hours of operation. Again, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It seems in that location like a reasonable time for it, time to be open if it complies with the city sound ordinance, and if it doesn't, the hours would have to be reduced to meet that daytime use level. I also like the idea of the adding the 78E. Commissioner Ottinger suggested asking or being explicit that future equipment modifications and changes should meet the same standards. And I would be in favor of striking 78B because I frankly think it conflates two ideas, the left turn onto Sebastopol Road and the left turn into Barnes. I don't think they're related. As someone pointed out, the idea that that would be happening seems remote. So I think that condition should be struck. But those are my thoughts. And again, it's been very helpful to have Steve and the two Steves here from the consultants. So thank you for your input and for helping us understand this project.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindenbush.
Thank you, Chair Fernandez. As a lifelong Sebastopolian, I think I understand, and as most of us probably here do, understand that Benedetti is an important business in our community and an important service to our residents. That being said, I think the consideration here is not whether or not this is a good proposal, but whether or not this proposal makes sense for this site and for our downtown. It was brought up that this would create a hardship in terms of the business that would be allowed here with the zoning variance, which I have the biggest problem with as well, along with other commissioners. And I think the zoning is there for a reason. We have an FAR of 1, which is pretty attainable for a downtown core and pretty low ultimately. And it's there because we don't want these types of projects in our downtown core to be proliferating in a way that denies us our ability to create the downtown that we've been working for a long time. That number wasn't just created out of nowhere. It was part of the general plan and went through the council and extensive community review. Our community wants a downtown that is livable and walkable and can support the kinds of residential developments that were brought up, not just for the site with the Ford building, but I think when you look at downtown, this is sort of one of the last areas of relatively undeveloped land in our downtown that might actually be a vessel for us to be able to meet some of our housing needs and really advance forward to some of the priorities that have been outlined time and time again, not just by the general plan or zoning or any of the other proposals that have been brought up, but by the community at large. So I do see a lot of work that has gone into this application. And I think that it's a strong application and it's difficult for me to be against it because it's in our downtown, because I think there has been a lot of attention paid to important issues of mitigation. There have also been others that I think leave some to be desired. In 2017, when this came before this commission, the issue of water and runoff was addressed as a key priority. We went in a little bit of a different direction in our proceedings with concern around noise or sound and water vapor and other considerations that I think were addressed fairly well. But that being said, I just don't think that there is enough detail in the proposal in terms of the impacts on the Laguna. We didn't hear anything from the applicant about what does this site look like if and when it floods again. This is in our flood zone and we have to be sensitive to that as well. So I just think there are a lot of considerations that are stacked against this project. And I generally probably would have been inclined to support it if it were in a different area, a different highway corridor of our town. And it's especially harder to not support this project because of the strength of the applicant, because of the strength of Benedetti, and the understanding that they would provide the due diligence that they would need to for this project to be a success. That being said, I just think the cons really outweigh it, and we have to be thinking about the type of downtown that we want to be stewarding, and I think that should be the #1 consideration for the council as well. And really looking at the long range for what this means for Sebastopol, not just for the next 10, 20 years, but what it's going to look like for my children and my grandchildren, who I hope can also call Sebastopol home and a place they can be proud of.
Thank you. Commissioner Ottinger?
Yes. I was feeling very strongly that the proposal was so good and that it combined a lot of the same uses and that auto-oriented uses, and that this would be a good project for the site. There are so many benefits, but I'm still feeling very disappointed about the fact that I don't see any guarantees that the building is containing its uses within the building that we already know are produce irritating sounds. I'm remembering when we approved a winery on the north side of town, and they guaranteed that even the odor of the occasional truck full of grapes, fresh picked or spent after processing, that those odors wouldn't escape the building except when the truck was actually coming in and going out at a few points throughout the year when they're harvesting. And it's that's great. You know, we can use science and ingenuity to create a building that contains its untoward effects on the neighbors, because we're a small town and we all live next to each other. So I was really hoping that actually, I think our land is worth what San Francisco is worth, a lot more, maybe not in dollars, but in making the place where we want to live. And I feel like if we were in San Francisco and they were building over this car wash, that car wash wouldn't emit noises or vapors or water of any sort. It would just happen. And I think that we need to move in that direction. The other thing is, when I went to Santa Rosa to look at the car wash, and normally when I think of a car wash, I think of it being associated with a gas station along a highway strip. And again, this downtown urban car wash was next to a McDonald's drive-through and next to a Dutch Brothers Coffee and some kind of funky buildings that have been there for years and are begging for renewal. And some apartment houses on the back that are totally undeveloped and are begging for some attention and renewal as well. And I don't think that the area looks primed for that, because perhaps the car wash and the auto-oriented uses right there. And I worry about the feeling that we're just throwing away this part of town. And we had such great hopes of what could be built here. And that bothers me a lot. And so I feel like between that and the fact that I actually thought there'd be taxes on a service, what was I thinking? So I'm concerned about the general blight in the area from this purpose. I feel like there are two properties adjacent to it, to the east and to the south, that that could become substantially useful developments in the area, but I think the car wash will be detrimental to that investment unless it can be completely contained. So I'm inclined to, try to fix as much as we can of the language, so when it goes to the council, they can say what they think and move in a direction that might create a building that absolutely positively contains all the noises, so that it isn't irritating or it isn't detrimental to the neighbors. And I don't see that it is doing that now. So that's how I'm feeling right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson.
Yes, thank you. Well, I feel like the city council has already given us guidance on this in the zoning code, and I've mentioned table 17.25-1, and it has a category for automotive repair and service, and that is not permitted in the downtown commercial zone. And that under that analysis, Benedetti's business would be a legal non-conforming use, perhaps not much different than the distillery. For some reason, distilleries aren't allowed in Barlow anymore. And so when Spirit Works came back, that was a legal non-conforming use and it was a permissible expansion. But anyway, I think that this table represents a policy decision by the council that automotive repair and services are not permitted in the CD zone. And the sales, automotive sales section is the one that staff has invoked without any analysis or discussion in the staff report and so forth. I feel like a lot of the sentiments that people have raised are consistent with this conclusion that automotive repair and service is simply not appropriate under the zoning code in the CD zone. So that's how I feel on that. And the variance, a variance requires a high bar. It's an exceptional and extraordinary circumstances. And I really haven't seen the facts. I don't think the findings make me comfortable in supporting that. And I agree with the comment that if this use was put in, it would tend to undermine the ability of the city to implement the general plan and the zoning for the CD zone to have mixed use and residential and so forth. So that's how I feel.
Okay, thank you. I guess it's my turn. This is a difficult project because on the one hand, we have a local business person who's trying to expand his business, keep people from driving to Santa Rosa, getting their car washes there, making extra trips. And I think they've done a really good job as far as at least attempting to answer the questions with traffic and several mitigation factors. It is allowed in that zone. However, I feel similar as far as the variance. Is there enough compelling argument there to go off and make those changes to the variance? I think that if there wasn't that variance, everything else was there, even though it may not be the appropriate place. I would say that it's zoned for it. It's how the general plan is set up to put the business there. It makes sense how they would want to combine it. But I think that the variance is the one part that gives me a little concern, because then we kind of lose our opportunity with other businesses coming in and wanting to do the same thing from that standpoint. So, I think that it's worthy of having, at least thankful that it's going to go on to the council. I think it's worthy for them to consider it. There's a lot of factors in here for that. But I think that I support the project. I'm having difficulty with the variances and the changes that need to be made. And, some of the points brought up as far as what we want in the downtown. They're already there, but said it's a difficult decision because I have a lot of respect for the business owner, and we're always talking about supporting local business. But, it's a difficult situation. So I'm at this point, if anyone wants to make a motion for approval or for denial, I'll entertain that motion.
I'll make a motion for denial.
Okay, a motion for denial. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Who's the second?
That was Paul Fritz.
Okay, thank you.
And somebody else.
Okay. All right. And is there any?
And just to be clear on this as a point of order, if I may.
Yes,
so this is obviously a motion to recommend denial to the city council.
Correct.
And given that we don't have a resolution prepared for this, I would request that if this motion passes, this be continued so that we can prepare that for the commission's review.
Okay. Would it have been more appropriate to have motions for approval and then have the vote, since that's what it's coming to us?
It does
for?
not matter whatever motion is on the floor.
Okay.
In this
All right.
case, there's a motion for denial, and that will be the first motion to consider.
Okay.
Can I pull it?
Pardon me?
If it would be easier to do a motion for approval, can I pull my motion?
I don't think that's necessary. I'll leave that to the chair, but it's not.
I think we're okay with.
Yes.
Okay, so then in this case, if you could do a roll call.
And actually, Chair, can you ask if there's any further deliberation or discussion on the
Is
motion?
there any other comments or?
I'll just say I concur. I think it was a hard decision, but I don't think it's the appropriate place for what we imagine for the future of our town, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. The one before we vote and ask if I guess our comments are going to be forwarded to City Council, and I'd like to make sure that, because this has come up multiple times, the ideas of turning of Sebastopol Road and the double line or double line. I think if we could, I'd like to have that comment clearly sent to council as something that needs to be addressed, and because this is going to come up again, and I think it's what Dave said is appropriate, that you can't single out one business or one driveway, but I think that needs to be considered, because that's just really messes up traffic, people trying to turn left anywhere on there. So, okay. And are there any other, and let's see, I think all the other comments are going to be forwarded. So on that. Okay.
Yeah, and we will draft the resolution based on the commission's deliberations this evening.
Okay. All right.
No matter how it goes. So.
Okay. All right. So if we could do a roll call.
Sure. Chair Fernandez.
No.
Vice Chair Fitz.
So the motion is to deny, correct?
The motion is to deny, yes, to
apologize.
forward a recommendation of denial. Should I start over?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the motion, just to be clear, the motion is to recommend to the City Council that the project be denied based on the Commission's deliberations on a resolution which would be forthcoming.
Okay.
Chair Fernandez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly.
Aye.
Commissioner Dauch.
No.
Commissioner Lindenbush.
Aye.
Commissioner Ottinger.
Aye.
Okay, and our alternate, Kate Howe, will not vote since we do have a full commission, although she got to participate in deliberation. That motion passes 6-1.
Okay.
And so given that we would like to do a thorough job, since this is a very complex project, and as you've seen with 2 full evenings of deliberations, we'd like to do a full explanation of that with the resolution. So I would ask that the commission continue this to the November 10th, so that we can draft that and bring that back. We do have a very full meeting next meeting, and anticipate there may be a little bit of discussion on the item when it comes back, when the resolution comes back to the commission.
Okay. So what you're saying to write the proper.
Right, so staff will
language.
prepare a resolution from the commission recommending denial of the project. We would come back to that and present it to the commission for your approval. Normally that's a consent calendar. In this case, I think there may well be a small amount of discussion associated with it. So I'm recommending we continue that to consider that to the November 10th meeting.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I've been taking notes as the commissioners have spoken, and I will use those notes as to provide the foundation for the findings that the commission's made recommended.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Okay, so Carrie, as far as the remaining items on the agenda, considering the time, and it's a 10:30 and we go to 11. What do you have recommendations as far as what you think time-wise it'll take?
I can do, so the RENA, housing needs allocation process is a fairly complicated, I can do a very brief presentation. It's a complicated process, but I can give the gist of it in a few minutes, or we could certainly continue it to like the November 10th meeting as well. Again, we won't have time the next meeting. The only note that I would have is and we can schedule it for both if folks want a brief discussion and follow on at the next at that meeting as well. It's just a discussion item of information. There is an ABAG executive board meeting this on the 15th in 2 days time. So if anyone did want to understand a little bit more about it to potentially make a comment, now would be a good time to give a brief background on it. So I will leave that to the chair and the commission to determine where they want to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important item, and I hate to just glance through it. We could start it. And then as far as item 8A, that's just a kind of a report, right?
Yeah, and that was actually just mostly to remind myself when I did the planning director report, which if you want to move, I can do that very briefly now.
Okay. In input from the rest of the commissioners as far as item 7A, do you want a brief report, then continue, or?
I don't mind waiting until November 10th. I don't think I'm going to make a report to ABAG in 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving that to November 10th.
Okay.
Agreed.
So let's, with everyone's, no one's denying that, let's go with, we'll move 7A, continue to the 10th, and we'll move on to item 8A, planning director's report.
Thank you. And the item that I did want to make sure I got to, I'll start with the local hazard mitigation plan. As you know, this is on the Planning Commission's work plan as well as the city's work plan to do an update to our, this is a required study identifying hazards, natural hazards, as well as other types of hazards like political unrest, even domestic terrorism. When I wrote the RFP for this, I actually input power outages, PSPSs, and make sure that we address how the city can respond better and mitigate impacts from those. I did not put in pandemics, but clearly but I have seen that identified in previous plans. You know, the traditional fire, flood, earthquakes are sort of the core ones, but we have included climate change and drought and things like that that are sort of more recently thought about as hazards. And so we did have a kickoff meeting for that with our consultant about a month or so ago. They've been working on some data collection. And we do have a stakeholder group, which is it's about 13 folks, about half city staff who have key responsibilities for responding to hazards. So police, fire, planning, public works. And then the others are representatives of community groups that also help in response. So someone from the community center, since that's often a shelter, potential shelter site, the facilities person from Annalee High School, again, a potential shelter, someone from the senior center, to represent both needs of seniors, but also that location. And we do have Commissioner Douch, not as a commissioner, but as a representative of the Red Cross and local business, who has understanding of construction and rebuilding kind of capacities. And we do have a meeting for that coming up in a week's time. And then on October 27th, we will be using the Planning Commission as our advisory committee, overall advisory committee for the project. But on the 27th, starting at 7 p.m., we will be using the Planning Commission as a joint way of holding a public workshop where we'll be advertising the city newsletter and inviting our consultant will be presenting and getting some input, but it will be open to the public. So it'll be a little bit of an odd commission meeting, but I felt that, and I discussed it with Chair Fernandez, that both with this group being having a lot of key representation throughout the city in terms of business owners and various aspects of the community, that it would be great to sort of have you as a captured audience, as the public, as well as an advisory board for this project. But also, given the pandemic and trying to figure out ways of engaging the community, to have a set time. And I personally have been very pleased, as many of my compatriots have been, that we've actually been getting a lot more public engagement with the Zoom with the virtual meeting format than we often get in person. And so this is how we'll be presenting that. So that'll be October 27th, and we'll start that at 7 p.m. We did hear from the commission that everyone was available to start the meeting at 6 p.m. to have the Ives Park maintenance discussion that Commissioner Haug has organized. And we will have Dante Del Prete, the public works superintendent, at that meeting as well. And so, Kate, I don't know if you want to say a couple words, but I will just sort of remind folks that the tour of the notes, if you could do those this week and get those to Rebecca or myself, we will compile them and or send those emails to Kate, and she's offered to help compile those so that city staff can look at any questions that need to be answered, and also be able to present that back to the commission as part of your staff report for that. Any questions about the local hazard mitigation plan? There will be a sort of a broad overview of that at the beginning of the meeting on the 27th as well.
Okay. Any other items for report?
Let's see, the city council has been fairly busy. They did review the capital improvement plan for the coming year at their meeting a week ago, and they did approve it. They also approved, and so that had basically the recommendations from the commission on the parks projects have remained unchanged. And so those are now sort of fully approved in the final CIP budget. The council does have a meeting, public hearing tomorrow night, a special meeting on the budget for departmental and community grants and things like that, if you're interested. They have also been conducting interviews for the climate subcommittee. Commissioner Lindenbush is the commission's representative on that. So he got all the interviews, but gets to be on the committee. And they are they have one final interview tomorrow, and they will be making appointments at their meeting next Tuesday. As well as next Tuesday, they will be, assuming the budget proceeds tomorrow night, that would be their night to adopt the budget. And I think some of you may have seen in the news that the state did award Sonoma County a grant for Project Turnkey to purchase the Hotel Azura in Santa Rosa. The county had submitted for that, and the Sebastopol Inn, as most of you know. They did not hear anything about Sebastopol Inn. I don't know if that project is just on hold at this point. I don't know if I believe there may be future funding rounds of the Project Homekey, but I'm not sure. So you know what I know now on that one. And I think that's it for my reports tonight.
Okay. Any questions of Planning Director? Okay. Well, I thank everyone for a lengthy but well thought out meeting. I appreciate everyone's patience and your homework that you've done. And if there's nothing else, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.